Welcome back, guys. My guest this week, he is the host of The Crucible. You've seen him do thousands of debates. You've seen him on Piers Morgan, and you've seen him on the Whatever podcast, along with his own show, The Crucible. You guys need to check him out. This is Andrew Wilson. Welcome, Andrew, to the show, man.
Thanks, guys, for having me. It's good to see both of you again.
For sure. And my co-host today, he has just finished his 6th book, Rational Male Reignite, and he put me in the dedication, so now I have to read it. It is Rollo Tomassi, and I dressed up for him as in Halloween. Welcome, Rollo Tomassi. For sure, man.
Did I tell you about my book?
Go, tell us about it.
Oh, it's great. It's almost 7 pages long, and it has little pictures, and they come up at you, and you open it. I was pretty impressed with myself.
Can I do the audio version?
Yeah.
You want me to do that?
Absolutely.
I'll read the audio version.
There's not a lot of text, really, but I feel like it just kind of tells a story.
Yeah.
You know, it tells a story.
Unbelievable. So one of the things I want to ask is, was there a point, so, you've been on our show a couple times before, you interact. Yeah, for sure. Was there a point, because I remember you doing debates and your positions on things. I remember you and James Sexton had a little back and forth on one of the things that we did. But then there was like meteoric growth. Do you remember was there a specific thing where you went from a place where this might be a hobby to where there was an explosive growth? Or was there a particular video or particular debate that you felt like kind of catapulted you?
Not a single one that did. It was a combination. So in some cases, I was just in the wrong place at the right time, like the Wes Watson thing. So and I've always maintained this for years since this has happened, right? I didn't really do anything. So first of all, I shouldn't have even been there, honestly. So I was invited out by Myron because, we've always gotten along well. And I happened to be in the area for this. And they were like, why don't you go up on the stage? You know what I mean? You're a pretty well-known guy. And the audience there, everybody was coming over to shake my hand because they'd seen me do tons of debates. And I was like, well, aren't you guys like, this is for like millionaires and people like this to describe how they achieved wealth and big muscles and stuff like this. And like, I'm not sure that I belong up there. You know what I mean? Jim Bob was with me and he's like, I definitely don't. And Myron was like, I think you do. I think you have a different sort of message that people relate to.
Yeah.
And I think you should go up there. And I was like, okay. And, with him, I barely even gave any. What was really funny about that is I barely gave pushback. I just gave a descriptor for the things I believe in, and he lost his mind. And I just happened to be there when he lost his mind. So then it became I made him lose his mind. But I really had not much to do with it. I just happened to be there.
Yeah.
So I mean that went mega viral. That was the most viral video that year, I think.
Really?
Oh yeah. I don't think anything even came close. I mean, so many commentators went over that. I'm not sure that was the thing, though, because before that we had Matt Dillahunty, various debates where I beat Destiny, various debates where, I mean, there's been like a lot of forward motion. So it's not any one thing, I don't think. And then the continuous viral appearances on whatever, engaging with social icons and kind of drubbing their worldview into the ground, that's been super helpful, too. So I'm not really sure I could point at one thing. I think the key to my success has been, more than anything else, the Crucible's audience.
Yeah.
So the audience I have it's not just merely a matter of kind of they're devoted to the message, but they really believe in the same kind of message that I do. And these guys are working, just like I used to, working 60 hours a week. They have one earpiece in while they're listening, they want some entertainment. And they also want to have someone affirm the damn worldview because it just gets beaten into the ground by everybody. And so they're really I think more than anything, the responsible party. It's the audience I have the best one on YouTube, hands down, guarantee it.
Your audience.
Yeah. Nobody's even close.
You mentioned one of your favorite interviews was Bivo the
Oh, yeah. Vivo. Yeah. So, again,
that's a name I haven't heard.
So people don't know this.
I had no idea who this person was.
People don't know this, but I never knew who was going to be on whatever. Like I never.
Oh, that's
knew.
great.
I never knew. I had no pre-information. Brian just never told me, and I never bothered asking. From my perspective, it was like I don't care. I'm happy to go in and engage. He just never told me, so I never knew who was going to be on. I was always in the dark. And it was just like, well, it's time, I'd go down and get my coffee, this and that. And what happens, que sera, right? And Bivo was on there, and I didn't know anything about this guy. I had no idea. And then he started talking. I asked a few questions, and I'm like, "Wait, so you let people your chick, dude?" And he was like, "Well, the money's really good, and this and this." So then I just told him, I was like, "Well, isn't that like textbook? Aren't you a?" And then he lost his mind, as though that had never occurred to him, that if you let dudes bang your chick, that's textbook, right? So, anyway, yeah, that mega viral, and his cope after went mega viral too, where he was like, "No, the whole thing was a setup," and then Brian was like, "No, it wasn't. It wasn't a setup. He came in and he wanted to be on the show, and he was, and." He insisted on coming on. So I don't know how you set a person up if they're insisting on coming on. So,
yeah, that was that when I heard you describing that was pretty funny. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is before you got into this, you were fixing robots.
Yeah.
What was the transition between the fixing robot? First off, how'd you get into that, and then what was the transition into YouTube?
I was an industrial maintenance mechanic.
Yeah,
and basically there was a shortage of people to work on a few of the robots. It was in some of these food factories, and so they took me and trained me, and that's how I got into it. So, but yeah, it's a well-paying career.
Yeah,
you don't need college for it; you just need training for it. How I got into this was during the COVID-19 lockdowns. I started arguing with stupid liberals on Facebook because I hate their guts. And I know the Sewing Circle Christians are going to be mad at me for saying it, right? For admitting out loud the truth, but I hate progressives. They're just awful, and they destroy everything that I think is worth having. They just destroy it all. So I would argue with them constantly, and I noticed that a few of these on Facebook, they would have these like little video chats, and I'd say, "Why don't you let me up there, you little fuck?" And so I'd jump on their panels and just start destroying them. And so some of those started moving over to YouTube, and an organization, they were just like little Facebook buddies or whatever. They wanted to start doing some YouTube videos. They started a small debate channel, and I was a part of that. And then it just started growing from there. But if you had asked me, during COVID, if I saw my future as a entertainer, I would have said no.
Yeah, we
talked not at all.
We talked about this at barbecue one time, and I remember it was a kind of a thing where it was you weren't as excited as you are now, but it kind of seems like this thing is blown up.
Yeah.
And you've seen just meteoric growth, especially when you talk about your audience and how well you guys do on there. And it's actually been amazing. And then the arrangement, I guess, between you and Brian with whatever. I mean, I saw you on there one time. I was like, "Oh, that's great. They got him on there." And then I started seeing you on there more and more. How did that transition happen?
Well, me and Brian got along great.
Yeah.
Immediately. I mean, we got along really, really well right away. And I don't know exactly why, but I gave a small amount of criticism the first time I was on. I just said, I really wish that I could have engaged a little more with their worldviews, but they treated me well, this and that. And he was like, "Look, if you're still in town, why don't you come back and we'll do another one?" Because he was running 2 shows a week at the time. He's like, "Stay the night, come back, do another one." And I was like, "Okay." So I went back and did another one. And I have the rule of 3. I would say it's going to take 3 times of me being on a program to win the audience over. But by the 3rd time, I'll win them over. So I asked him, I was like, "Give me one more chance after the 2nd time to come back." And I did. I won him over. And so from there, he asked me to do a video call as a fill-in, and that worked out really well. And then he asked me to come back the next week, and then the next week, and then the next week. And Eventually, he just kind of stopped asking, and I just set the timer. And then just every time there was a show, I was just like, "Okay, well," and so that's the way it went. It's like there was never any agreement. It's his show. I was never a co-host, nothing like that. I was just a long-term reoccurring guest. But it was so often that I just assumed it, and it worked out real well.
Did a lot of his audience come over to you?
They did, and a lot of mine went over to him.
Yeah, probably went from yours over to there.
Yeah, both. Yeah, it went both ways. Like there was a lot of guys there who were in the thing is about those dating podcasts is it's a really mixed bag, the audience, because you have guys in their 40s who are getting into dating, and they're like, "What the am I getting into here? This is crazy. And then you have guys who are in their 20s who are yelling at him, going, see, I told you, old man, this is how women are today, right? Yeah. So it's a really kind of a hugely diverse bag, and there's a lot of people there who they follow Christian ethics like I do, and they really want to see that worldview represented well. As you guys have noted on my side, people are very much the Christian right has become the biggest on planet Earth. They refuse to engage with these it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Massive content creators. They're huge content creators, tons of followers. You know what I mean? They just refuse. They're like, nope, they're not worth our time. I'm like, well, that's why they're kicking your ass. You absolutely refuse to engage with them. So I remember talking to Rolo about this a couple of years ago. And I was like, look, I want to understand the view first, right? And I found out that there was a lot to take away, right? This was a descriptive packet, a data packet, the red pill, not a prescription packet. And so if you go through it, you can use it any way you want. You can use it for evil. You can use it for good. You can use it for whatever, because it's trying to get to the psychology and the kind of normative ethics that goes around dating, rather than saying, here's how you fix it, just here's what it is. And so I think I was one of the first who tried to actually understand that. And so when I engage with red pill creators or manosphere creators from my view, I feel like I understand theirs pretty well.
The Dave Smith interview, I was watching that, and the both of you seem to agree on this idea that, you know, because you were married, you didn't quite understand how difficult dating had become recently. Like it was one of these things. And so this is something that Rollo and I talk about this frequently. It's that when I listen to Matt Walsh, it's not that I disagree with everything he's saying, or when I listen to some of these other guys, like I love them as content creators, but like dating nowadays, I just don't think they understand what social media and dating apps has done to create a level of what you coined as female narcissism. I don't think they fully grasp that when you got married before Facebook. It's funny, Tom from MySpace came to my birthday the other day, Tom Anderson. It's just the idea of what happened before then, how dating was. I'm 48 years old, so I remember I was 23 years old when I got a cell phone. Yeah. I remember what it was like before, going up to girls in Austin, Texas, seeing beautiful women there all the time, and then them not.
And it was fine.
Their phone, yeah.
And it was fine. And the thing is that no, the female narcissism had not set in yet, because, I mean, to a degree, it was always there. You know, the beautiful women knew they were beautiful, that's for sure. Okay, but you couldn't get the validation like you can now, where you just push a button. I mean, a beautiful woman, she posts a picture of herself in a bikini, right? That's gotta feel wonderful, right? I mean, just thousands of these simps going, oh my God, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, you know, it's like, imagine having that at your disposal, just like anytime you want to feel better, you can just like push a button and thousands of people will run in and be like, do you feel okay now, baby? Do you feel okay now? Oh, gorgeous. Can I buy you dinner? Can I, you know what I mean? Like that's, but the problem is it's double-edged. So like when I talk to people, I try to explain it this way. It's how I explained to Dave Smith. Imagine having a superpower that like, you can have whatever you want whenever you want it, right? But you only have it for a short amount of time, and then it's gone forever. And you're always trying to recapture it, right? And it doesn't go away immediately, but you just notice as Superman, the bus gets a little heavier every day, right? The flight, you can't quite get as high as you used to every single day. And then eventually you just become like everyone else. And that's the story of American women. That's the story of all women. And eventually the superpower goes away. And now you're right, because you spend all that time trying to move towards that validation, and you use that superpower for gifts and for this and for that, and now it's all gone.
Yeah.
And the red pill, I think, was the very first descriptive packet, which was really trying to help women more than anything by pointing that out. Right? It wasn't just like when I go back, because Rollo explained the history, so I started looking into it. This was years ago. He explained it. I had you on for an interview, remember? And he was like, you got to dig into this. The original people talking about it were really discussing not just, you know, the benefits for men and men and men and men and men, but they were discussing how women don't really realize how screwed they're going to be if they take their 20s and basically squander it with what they have with their superpower, right? So you imagine you have two superpowers. They have two. One, they have virginity, which if you don't give that away, it's worth, I don't know how much now, but it's worth a lot. And they just give it away. It's like gold bar. They just go drop it in a pond. You're like, you're crazy. And then the second is the validation. And as they get older, that goes away. And they can see it scalable too, right? Oh, I used to get 1,000 likes. Now I only get 500. Now I only get 200. Now I only get one. And that actually makes them feel worse. You know, they're still getting validation,
losing
but
the dopamine.
losing,
Yeah.
they're like, and then they see other women getting it, and that enrages them. And that's where guys like me come in to be like, haha, right? Like when they become enraged by this factor. But it's like you did it to yourself. And usually what they try to do then is pull the ladder up behind them, right? They're like, and that's where you start to see a lot of them move into, I'm a Christian now too.
That's where I was going to next.
Too.
Yeah. So you've seen this. So the lack of validation. He talks about the wall. Rollo talks about the wall. The lack of validation, kind of, because me as a Christian, also I see this thing happen where a lot of women are like, they're turning to Christianity for absolution for what they did previously, and because they think this is the best way for them to get a good man. You've seen this as well, and what do you think about this? So it's like the social media then perverts the way they see the world. You mentioned, I thought there was a great description, because we talk about the top tier men hooking up with all these women. What he described was the average woman can now compete for top tier men because of social media.
Not just that, but
Yeah.
they believe they can.
Yeah.
There's also an essence, I think, that I've learned dealing with. You call them something, right? I have two distinctions for them. One's a femcon, right?
Yeah.
The feminist conservatives, which most of them are. And then the second is the sewing circle Christians, how I refer to them. And the sewing circle Christian is exactly the type of woman that we're talking about right now. And some of them are men too, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Some of them are men. But with that validation, you know what comes with that for these women is control. They have complete control. They have control over all the simps. They have control over their life. They have control over their money. And with the lack of validations, that starts to move down. Guess what happens? Their control moves down. Well, where can a lot of these women find a new sense of control? In the church, right? They come into the church and they start henpecking their way through all of the poor bastards who are there, who are trying to be nice and kind and follow the prudence in the Bible. When you're talking about the fruits of the Spirit, they're trying to do everything they can, bend over backwards to assist you in your plights in life. That's what clergy is there for, and they just use it as a weapon to bludgeon everyone to death. It's just, I think that at its root, it's more about control than anything else.
So this is something I haven't heard anybody ask you about this, but it's the concept of, I have the guy who's chaste stays in the church. It's a lot easier for a man if he doesn't try to stay a virgin, right? Because there's not as many people trying to have sex with him. Let's just say he's 24, 25. He remains a virgin. He stays in the church. And now you have a woman who's either a former sex worker, maybe she's on OnlyFans, or maybe she's just a girl who's been rewarded by her friend group.
She's now a predator.
Yeah. She's now, that's exactly my point. She's now rewarded by her friend group for her promiscuous lifestyle. And then she comes back into the church, and now she's so much more technologically sophisticated than this guy who's in the same position, but he's in the same position because he chose to not get that experience. You see how there's it's almost like the colonists taking over the Native Americans.
I mean, you get it. Like, you understand exactly what's going on. And the thing here let me tell you about a secret war that you may not know about, though. There is a secret war going on in what we would call the base churches. So these are the traditional churches. It would be Orthodox, it would be Roman Catholic, and high church Protestants. So these are people who are very rigorous, right, in their faith. Like, they're not going to, if it's a feast day, they're going to adhere to it. If it's not a feast day, they're going to adhere to it. They're going to engage in the sacraments, right? They're going to sit in family prayer. Them and their wife are really going to focus on these things. And what has happened is those churches are not immune to this, right? But because so many young men, right, who've been disillusioned are moving towards the church, right? There's now a war with the older patriarchs of these various churches and the kind of people who are coming in, the younger men, who are saying, listen, you don't really understand socially what's happening in the world. And because of that, you don't really know how predatory a lot of these women are who are coming in. But some of them do get it, right? Some of the older patriarchs do get it, and the priests get it now, and they're starting to. Wait a second. Are you coming in here because you're repentant and you're looking for forgiveness from Jesus Christ, and you're engaging in the sacraments not for status but out of humility? right? Or is it that you're here because you can throw your weight around and be hyper predatory and think that you're owed something? And you'll hear, and it's very insidious and devious how they'll do it. The Lord has forgiven and purified me. Who are you to tell me that I can't have one of these great men?
Yeah.
Right? I have been cleansed by the Holy Spirit. All right? And because of that, I am born again into a life, a good Christian life. And with humility, I'll look. And that's not what's going on at all.
Yeah.
What's going on is they're perverting the text. They're perverting Christianity. And the patriarchs of old would have run their out with a rod. They would have walked in and they would have said, sit down, shut your mouth. Don't say a word ever. Never say a word. Always be in here with humility. And if God rewards you with a husband, you better thank him. You better get on your, but that's not the way that it's going now. The idea of the fruits of the Spirit has been so socially to just mean anything in modernity which is considered socially nice. That is now what is considered Christianity. That is not Christianity.
Yeah.
And it's never been Christianity. And I push back against those people even more than I push back against what I call the social degenerates, the pickup artist, the red pillars who use the descriptive packet for the Sith instead of the Jedi, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is like you've touched on the great American war that's hidden, that nobody knows anything about, right? And they're not going to yet. It's going to take another couple of years. Rolo's been talking about it. I've watched him go after him on Twitter, and I'm always sitting there. Well, I always get the ding, and it's a Rollo post, and I'm like, nah, what's going on, right? What's
not be aggravating these days?
Yeah, well,
it's like it's so prevalent right now.
It's so well, and it's going to get worse.
Well, like remember when Novel Fit Sooner thing, or Novel Raven, or
Yeah.
now it's like it was just like this textbook example of just what you're saying is it's what I call the prodigal daughter, scenario, and the prodigal daughter goes out and does OnlyFans and has a phase from 18 to 28 or by around 29. That's when suddenly she wants to get right with God, and you're better. I no more fun for me, or I'm gonna get serious right now. So I've had my fun, and so there's this sort of like paradigm shift for that woman right around 29, 30, 31 years old, which of course 30 is the average age of first marriage right now. So when I point this out I know you've done this too, but when I point this out on Twitter, that's when you get the Allie Beth Stuckeys. That's when you get like the Lauren Chans. That's when you get a lot of these, the Isabel Moody's, the people who are, the women who are, like, I guess you would call them the sewing circle Christian.
Yeah, the sewing circle. Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll come at you and say, well, don't you think that if a woman can be sincere about her conversion? I'm like, yeah, it's like, I don't question the sincerity. I question the timing.
Yeah.
That's what I question, because it's almost seen as like part of the plan.
Well, this is a good segue. I would point this out to you because, I mean, obviously it's suspect, right? Like you're not saying it's not the case, but you're saying that people have every reason to be suspect of the case. And if other people were engaging in this, obviously they would be. But right.
Then that's the beauty of the whole engineering, because when I was writing the fourth book on religion, one of the things that I noted in that book is that Christianity is the only real faith that relies on forgiveness, right? Everything else is works. So if you definitely, Islam is based on works. You got to do these things to prove your faith. And so if you go through any of the Abrahamic religions, you go through maybe the Eastern religion, but be yourself accept. You get into Christianity.
The original church is the ecclesiastical church is its faith and works. It's both. It was never the idea. This is a very modern Protestant.
To draw to Christianity.
Yes.
Because of that basis of forgiveness, and that's what we are relying on. It's like, well, God's forgiven me, why can't you?
Yeah.
And then if you have any doubt about their sincerity, it's not a doubt about them, it's a doubt about your faith, because you're the one saying, well, can this person really be saved? Oh, so you're a doubter then.
Well, the thing is I think it's easier for them to attack you because you're not a Christian, right?
Well, I am, but like,
right.
Not in the sense that I have like a denomination.
Right.
I don't know where I belong.
Right. So they just be like, well, he's an atheist, or he's a this, or he's not a real believer, and they can be very dismissive. It's a little harder with me, right? To be dismissive. When I levy these criticisms and I'm willing to go on your show, I'm a baptized Orthodox Christian, good standing of the church, and I'm happy to levy these criticisms and get into the faith portion of it and get into the scriptural portion. I'm happy to do that, and that's poison to these people. That's like the antidote to the venom, is saying, well, actually your interpretation of this is wrong. This is crazy. You're not owed anything except you owe God humility. That's it. He doesn't owe you anything. And this is not a pathway for anything except what is supposed to be humility in the face of forgiveness. And why you're supposed to be so humble is, after all the horrible things I do, I'm still allowed to have grace and forgiveness. That's the amazing part of the story of Christianity. Not that you're supposed to get something for it. That's not the story of Christianity. Yeah. Ministry. She started ministry. And then she told me, and she told me live when I was on whatever, I was like, you're LARPing as a ministry. You don't know anything about the Bible. You didn't know that there was a Trinity. You don't know anything about your own faith, and you have a ministry. She said, I don't have a ministry. Next day, Guiding Light Ministry, Minister Gamal Ray. Yeah, and it's like, come on. You don't know anything about this stuff. You know nothing. These people have devoted their entire lives to this. But the crazy part was, how many of those guys, those simps, how many of these Christians, supposedly, came out in defense, didn't even bother to look at the context, didn't even bother to look into it for 5 seconds. Michael Knowles was one of them. I couldn't believe it. And I put out a Twitter post refuting everything he said and explaining, like, yeah, while it's true we need to forgive people and we're trying to bring them into the church, we also have to protect the people in the church from the bad elements of the perverse, right? And he just leaves that whole part out. He didn't bring up the ministry. He didn't bring up anything. He's just like, well, that's swell. Good luck to you. Pat on the head. Good luck to you.
On the George Jenko, he did a response to George Jenko's interview of Nala Ray. And he had popped up with some, I don't even know, because I don't quote scripture, but it was some scripture about like wisdom, something like that. And you're like, well, wisdom would be doing a background check on this chick, and out where she is and what she's all about before you bring her on and legitimize her with your show.
Well, not only that, Jenko, he let her all over the whatever podcast, and she lied her ass off, right? She was the one who wanted to go on, all right? They both lied. Her husband made death threats on the podcast. Like it was the biggest con ever. So Jenko, to give her the softball interview too, none of them were going to ask her any actual serious questions. I was the only one who did, and so I was, of course, crucified for it. Jenko says, I would love to have Andrew and Rachel on the podcast. We're like, great, when? Right? Oh, we'll get it set up. So we reached out to the producer multiple times. Dead silence. And it's like, yeah, you didn't want us on there. You wanted to say you did. All right. But give me a break. Like I would love to go on there and just eviscerate that guy for allowing, with no pushback, this woman to all over us as though we did something wrong. She did something right. It was the opposite was the case.
Get your take on this too, because it's like when you look at a guy like Dorshenko, or do you work with these guys like even Perswernerson, or I mean, we're looking at it from more of like a faith-based side of things. So we're looking at influencers that are part of sort of a religious niche for the Mediterranean. But I think that a lot of their content, or what they think will be like Dorshenko would be a good idea, is really not so much about the actual conversation or actually having a debate or actually even just sorting things out, but just have some sort of substantive conversation. Is more about brand building than it is about whatever they're stating.
Well, let me ask you this. Why is it that in modernity, Christians, especially ones who are popularized online, like I have no ministry, I don't, and I'm not ever going to have one. I don't want one. I'm an entertainer and I'm an Orthodox Christian. That's true.
But you do disciple to other people.
I don't do ministry work.
Well, I mean, not literal ministry work, but people may come to the kingdom of God through watching your content.
It is the case. I get letters and DMs from all around the world from clergy thanking me, and I always tell them the same thing. I'm an entertainer, okay, who just happens to be an Orthodox Christian. I'm glad that it is the case that's become a funnel towards orthodoxy, but I'm not the best representation, okay, of what you'll really find in a great Orthodox church. I'm an entertainer. That's what I do. But I do engage in very good faith debates and brutal debates with people, and have for years, and that's going to continue, where, of course, I'm representing my worldview, and that's the basis for the worldview. So I think people see that, and that's what funnels them over, you know what I mean, is the idea that I'm representing that worldview very well when it comes to the debates themselves. So that's the portion. But kind of back to this, to ask you the question, in modernity, why do you think it is that so many of these online ministries get this so wrong? Why are they so gullible and stupid? Why can't they use reason, common sense, logic, anything like that? Why do you think it is? Because I think you touched on something important. Is it about the brand, or is it about the message? Because if it's about the message, I fully expect clergy to not be gullible idiots. Like I expect them not to be. I expect that after having talked to thousands of people, your gullibility starts to decrease. And yet somehow with these people, it doesn't. It makes me think that maybe there's ulterior motivations.
Could it be that the software update, societal software update of social media was so pervasive and happened so quickly that these guys who are in the clergy can't keep up? Could that be part of where this gullibility comes from?
I mean, we've had that software update for 15 years.
Yeah.
It's like, I think you need to get to the party at some point.
I'm saying, I still talk to guys. Again, if you're in the clergy, let's say you're a Protestant and you're married, or you're Catholic and you're not married, or whatever, but you not really participated in the dating lifestyle over the last 15 years and seen how much, because it truly is, they're addicted to their phone. Like, that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah,
it's like beautiful women. You're going on a date with them, and they don't think it's that big of a deal that they've been on their phone the entire time. And I talk to clients constantly, and they're dealing with this. And I feel like maybe that is something that's happened so fast, because whenever I hear, when we talk about before, when we talk about Matt Walsh talking about dating and marriage, it's like, it's very clear to me. It's like, you got married before the software update. It's sometimes PBD, the same thing. When PBD talks to Adam Sosnick, it's like, no, Patrick, you got married before this whole thing happened. And so I don't think that maybe naturally get it.
A lot of that conflict that comes from the lacking of the software update is seeing, I think one of the reasons why, like, those guys don't want to talk to me. They don't. Matt Walsh damn well knows who my name is, right?
Yeah.
He knows who Jim Sexton is. He's had him sit across the table from him and has had those conversations about divorce. So if I do that and I go out there and I just give them law data, right? We're saying, yeah, that's what the red pill's about. It's a praxeology. You can use it for good or for evil, right? Same thing that Jim Sexton is doing. He's just giving you divorce statistics. If you ask him for his opinion on, like, well, don't you believe in love? Yeah, he'll tell you. In between him telling you these are the divorce stats and all this other stuff that's going on there. I think what happens is when you have that sort of empirical data that goes on there, you can't tell people facts without telling them how to feel about those facts. If you don't, they will assert or infer their own meaning. So
I use that quote all the time, but just so you know, I credit you with it. I say there's one thing about Rollo, he always gets right.
Well, but the thing is like when somebody is so ego invested in those beliefs, and we give them that raw data that may or may not, like, conflict with that, but it's something that sort of makes them think of a question, or the question that they have to ask, that they are uncomfortable answering.
Yeah.
And when that question or that conversation is not only a challenge to their belief set, but it's also a challenge to their revenue stream too, because they've built a brand on an alleged mission statement or an alleged set of beliefs. And that's where Matt Walsh found himself, and which is why I think he kind of balances.
But this is crazy to me, because they do have good data on their side. Like, for marriage in traditional churches, there's good data on our side. I mean, the Orthodox divorce rate's 9%.
Yeah.
9%. The Catholic divorce rates, depending on what you look at, is between 18 and 21%. Right? The traditional churches are definitely a helpful safeguard from divorce. And they also produce better outcomes for people. And I see a lot of these guys, what'll happen is this. When you're looking at data, and you know this probably from looking at it so often, you have to parse it, right? It's not, you can't just take.
It's one thing to look at data, it's another thing to interpret.
Yeah, you have to parse it out, right? And so when people say, half of all marriages end in divorce. No, they don't. No, they don't. You know, well, at least half of first marriages do. No, they don't.
No, 43%.
Okay, no, they don't.
Yeah.
Like, you're objectively wrong, and you're saying something stupid, right? And then when you start breaking those things down even more, you start to realize, well, wait a second, the Amish don't get divorced at all. Not at all. They're like, never. And even the ones who go on the Rumspringa and end up going out in the world almost never get divorced. Orthodox, very low divorce rates. Roman Catholics, very low divorce rates. High church Protestants, very low divorce rates, right? It suddenly marriage takes a whole different meaning on. You're like, wait, now why would that be though? Why would that? Is it just because they're so faithful and they do this enough? Is that it? No, it's not it. It has nothing to do with that. Look deeper. We're community animals, right? We have social communities and if you go, think about this. What do you do once a week with your boys? Almost nobody ever even does something once a week with their boys. They don't go fishing once a week with their boys. They don't do anything. But these people, they're going to a function once a week with a community, sitting down, hashing out issues, problems, and they have authorities that they turn to. If that's the case, now you have social reinforcement. And that's the last bastion of social reinforcement. Now we have social reinforcement. We have ecclesiology. We have all of this help when it comes to this marriage and these problems and things like this. Rollo says something all the time. Best point in the world. He says, and I always laugh when he says this, and my wife will laugh too as she's bringing me my coffee in the morning. He says on Twitter, you know what? Sewing Circle Christians, you want to know the best advice you can give other women, right? Your husband, right? Best advice you could give, right? And so I look at this and I always laugh because while a sermon in a traditional church will not say those words, they won't say go home and fuck your husband. They will sit down and say to deprive one, right? When you're one flesh, to deprive one the other, right, is doing not just a great disservice to them, but to you. And they will say, and keeping yourself attractive to your spouse and things like that, that's important as part of that not depriving. They really do actually focus on intersexual dynamics and the reinforcement behind it, and it really helps a lot of people, right? And what does secularists have? Well, they have a psychologist who's a woman every time, right? She's a woman every time. She's usually in her early 20s. She doesn't know shit about shit. And these older married couples are coming in saying, we're having serious problems. We've been married 10 years. He's fat, right? And I'm fat, and we're not attracted to each other anymore. We don't know what to do. And they give you some self-help guru over-psychologizing that means nothing, right? And inside the church, the authority and the community's helping you with this, right? They're like, well, hey, Greg, you do a lot of fitness stuff. Do you think you could help Chuck with this? So now Greg's helping Chuck get fit. The women will come around and they'll say, hey, you can cook better food. Here's some great recipes. We'll drop some food off. Suddenly there's that support group. And one of the things that I was always appealing about the Red Pill Manosphere was they were trying to be a support group for men.
Yeah, right.
But it was like, you know what? We already have that as long as you're religious. But secularists, when they ask me, like, what's the answer for secularists? If you're going to have Satan go ahead and officiate your wedding because you're a secularist, why don't you expect to have bad results? Secular marriage has always been stupid. It's never been good. It's never done much for anybody. And so when those guys are like, well, we're just going to go be degenerates, I'm like, I don't care. But it's for the men who don't, and they want to have successful relationships. It's very clear to me, looking at the data when you parse it out, where you're going to be able to have those successful marriages with very low rates of divorce. And that's not me being a tradcon. That's me doing the same thing you guys are. Here's the data. Yeah. Now refute the damn data or shut your mouth about it.
One of the things I thought was really interesting is you talked about social reinforcement as almost like a tool, and you had that debate with CGA, and he kind of didn't didn't grasp that concept, or he didn't try to understand.
No, he kept saying, so you gonna have the pastor come in and make your wife you, and I'm like, no, you idiot, no, you stupid idiot. The point is that social reinforcement is the key element for all human behavior. Okay, it's just like think of it from the position of a dog, right? What's positive reinforcement? Dog does good thing. Here's your nice treat, right? Here's your nice treat. Here's your nice treat. Eventually, the dog doesn't even worry about the treat anymore. He just wants you to pat him on the head, right? Social reinforcement, social reinforcement. Humans are much the same way, right? Well, you might say, well, we're actually smarter than the dog. In some ways, we're dumber because we go against the social reinforcement for the social order. But all of our behaviors are based around social and societal reinforcement. All of it. Everything you can ever think of is the case. That's the case. With churches doing that with social reinforcement towards female behavior especially, it makes a huge difference in people's lives. And the manosphere was trying to do that for men. And what it did was it fractured into a million. No. Fuck bunch of chicks, not a black pill, the red pill, the blue pill, the orange pill, the gray pill, the purple pill, the chick passport, bro.
Because they were prescribing things.
Well, that's the thing. So the distinction that I make is this: is there's the red pill, which is the praxeology. So when people say, "Well, what's the black pill? What's this?" I go, "Those are practices. People have taken that information and they said, this is what we have to work with. We think this is what we should do with this." As we were saying before, there's data and information and facts, and then there's how you parse that out and how you interpret those facts. And so when I talk about guys who are like in sort of like tradcons, use the same thing. You can live whatever, the white pill, the black pill,
the Christ pill, whatever.
Well, MGTOWs, MRAs, all they're doing, those are just practices using the same data set that we have, and they're saying this is what we think we ought to do with that, right?
This is the interpretation.
And so so separating those things, those quote unquote movements, I keep saying, like the red pill is not a movement, it's not a philosophy, it's not a belief set.
The data packet.
But the black pill is.
Yeah,
and
for sure. The black pill is very prescriptive,
and MRAs are
so
passport,
and
bro.
the Christ pill is.
Yeah,
so let's talk about this real quick. What you said before about it not being it's descriptive, not prescriptive, and then people taking that out of context. What I say is, like, I believe in gravity. I read Principia Mathematica by Isaac Newton. I believe in gravity, but I'm not a gravityist. But I can still look at the world and say, okay, the world is shaped this way because I understand how the theory of gravity works. If I believe in like economic forces, the invisible hand, Adam Smith, if I look at the world, that doesn't make me an economist or a Smithite. That's not what it does. But these are useful tools that we can look to look at the world without then saying, now this becomes a religion. There's no red pill membership card, right? You don't get a membership. There's no red pill, here's your red pill lanyard.
Card carrying red pill. You are a rational male.
I just think if people would look at it and say, hey, this is a lens with which to look at the world.
It's a worldview.
Correct. It lens with which to look at the world as opposed to a membership. And then say within that lens, now there's a group of guys that want to hold you accountable, that want to get you back to the gym and do those things rather than, like for instance, I'll tell you, this is just, I have beliefs internally on what the best way for a man to be attractive to the opposite sex is. If a man didn't do any of those things and married a sex worker and acted like a complete simp and then came to me 15 years later and said, hey, man, I know what you say, but she gave me three beautiful children and I'm the greatest guy, I'm having the greatest marriage ever, I would applaud him and I'd be like, hey, man, you beat the odds. But I wouldn't hate him. You understand what I'm saying? Oh, you broke red pill dogma. No, because there's no dogma.
Yeah, there's no purity test.
That's
for
the
red
point.
pill.
It's like my belief in physics is not something that makes me a physicist. What it does, though, it's a lens with which I can look at certain items in the world and say, okay, this is. Let me look at this. Okay, this doesn't make any. Like, I understand free market economies, and when people are like, I have a Bollinger Band that I know that can predict market movement, I'm like, wait a second, let me use some math here. I understand how Brownian motion works, and stochasticity and randomness, and like, no, I think you're full of shit. I can do that because I can see the lens of a free market economy with which to say, okay, this is bullshit and this isn't bullshit. What I do with that is my own decision because no one's prescribing.
But
it
I've
to me.
understand that. I've understood this for a long time. That while I take issue with the semantics that Rollo has specifically for praxeology, the semantic distinction, we're still basically saying the same thing. It's a data packet.
It's a good enough description.
It's good enough
for now.
description for now. Yeah. So it's a data packet,
Yeah.
and I get it. I understand that completely. And there's things I've taken from it which have been very useful, right? But Christian ethicists and Christian ethics, we are prescribing. It is prescription based. Sure. Like when I was debating with this idiot the other day in this very same studio, Coach, whatever his name is, he kept saying, you're talking about in the future. This doesn't exist now. And I'm like, no, dude, it exists right now. I'm showing you the numbers that exist right now. Yeah. The difference when you say all these marriages fail, it's like for some groups, for some demographics, for black groups, that's how we ended up on black people. Was, yes. I said for some groups, like if you take blacks, the divorce rate's much higher there than it is for white people, and there's contributing factors for that. Again, just going through the data set, and of course the guy just filibustering Spurg, but if I could have gotten through it, I would have just kind of pointed this out. These different groups have these different rates for reasons. So if it's the case that you want the benefits of marriage, and there are many, and the data parses this out too.
Sure.
There are many benefits, but you don't want that downside, which is what we're really arguing about, which is divorce. If you look at the field of all of the various groups that are getting married or divorced, mine are doing the best here, okay? So if that's the case, and I'm going to make a prescription, what the hell other prescription would I make other than we're doing the best, and we're continuing to do the best, and we're going to continue to do the best. So if that's the case, where the hell else are you going to go? If that's what you want. Now, if that's not what you want, your chances of failure, they're going to be super high, and it doesn't even matter if you're a red pill, black pill, whatever, because you lack that social cohesive reinforcement, and that's it.
I want to add a piece of context that I've heard you mention before, but not in every debate, and that is the concept that like not every man is going to get married.
No.
You're not saying because we look at the anthropological record, we can see about 40% of men and 80% of women throughout history have reproduced. That means 60% of men never reproduce.
It could be higher. That I've seen lately from the 2024 data. Now, I haven't parsed this, to be fair, so this is all knee-jerk, that it could have been as high as 70% of men never reproduced.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. And this had a lot to do with they were expendable.
Yeah.
They're expendable.
Yeah, definitely. And so we've seen that there's actually one point, I want to say, don't quote me correctly, but about 9,000 years ago, that it was like 17 women for every one man that was reproducing.
8,000 years ago.
Yeah, 8,000 years ago. That was a situation that happened because there had always been times throughout history there were surplus men. So while your prescription for marriage as being a great thing, it's not the salvation for all of humanity, because you're saying, well, there's some men, either secular or just men that women don't find attractive, that probably aren't going to get married.
My prescription is based specifically around this, and this is what the debate was about: marriage in the West, right? Wasn't about anything other than marriage itself. From my view, marriage is a religious institution. It's not for secularists anyway. That's one, right? So when I define marriage, religion's already baked in. Everything else is not even marriage to me. It's just some that you made up, okay? And you got a state contract for, which is... If you ask me, though, I want to get married. Men who want to get married because they want the benefits of marriage, right? Which is more stable households, right? Much more well-adjusted kids, and your happiness index is way higher. Almost everything. There's huge benefits to it for men. Okay, and we could go through step by step each data point. You could maybe dispute some of them or quibble over some of them, but you're going to have to walk away with the understanding that it is beneficial for men.
Yeah.
And so the ones who want to partake in those benefits of the stable household, things like that, what would we prescribe for those men? My argument is that the prescription of the traditional church gives the best outcomes for people who want stable marriages. And I demonstrated it over and over and over, just in the outcome of not having to deal with divorce as much, right? At significantly lower percentages, and the outcomes for your children being way, way, way better.
In a two-parent household.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's marriage, right? Two-parent household.
Yeah.
So if it's the case you want to partake in the benefits of marriage, right, out of all the options available to you, that's the best one. And that's what the debate is, right? And these guys, like the Puas and the idiots and the dummies who are like, no, don't do that. Just like that guy sent out a tweet saying, screw prostitutes and play video games.
Right.
Right. And I'm like, what? No. The idea of you as a secularist not wanting to partake in marriage makes total sense to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I never believed you did anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. I never believed you did anyway. But if you're trying to partake in that, in marriage, there's only one thing that seems to be the stalwart against the social progression of feminism, and that's the traditional churches. And I'll argue those data points with anybody, anytime.
Going back to the social reinforcement thing, I've heard in different debates that you've had the kind of a skepticism towards it. And I had a skepticism towards it until something happened recently, which is in this last election, watching how many African-American and Hispanic men switched over to the Republican Party. And it's funny because
it was now allowed.
Well, remember, I called it the Myron Gaines effect. And then Kamala Harris, in her memoirs, literally wrote it was Andrew Tate and Myron Gaines. By name were the people that were causing so many minorities to now feel, remember, social reinforcement. Now it was socially reinforced that I don't need to vote for the party of Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, Glorilla, and Jennifer Lopez. I don't have to vote for that party anymore. Maybe I want a wife. Maybe I want a woman who isn't going to cheat on me. And it doesn't matter what color my skin is. So when I see social reinforcement change something that has been so dogmatic for 70, 80 years, black people, you vote liberal, period. You don't have any, you are absolutely no question about it. It doesn't even matter if you don't like your party, you vote that. When I see that social reinforcement, and then you talk about a sisterhood of women that used to put the social reinforcement to say, hey, maybe Stella got her groove back, eat, pray, love. Maybe you shouldn't be bragging about the fact, Brittany Renner, that you slept with 3 guys in one day, and then becoming famous for that. Maybe the social reinforcement from women might be the way to create the society that you're trying to represent here.
The thing is, it's funny, is that pre-feminism, we had that.
Yes.
So the idea was women, because they were not political pawns, were looked at as more moral authorities on things, okay? They weren't considered authorities in the world, but they were considered moral authorities in the world. That's how we got things like prohibition, right? Shit like that. Those were all, that was a woman's temperance movement.
Yeah.
Okay? Because they were looked at as being more moral than men because men were political cogs. Right? And so we were doing things which were based around self-interest and voting blocks and the positioning basically for power, because women didn't have access to social power that way. They had access to power a different way, which was through moralizing, right? And they actually weren't terrible at it. They weren't terrible at it. And one of the things that they did that was really good with moralizing was if women were out giving away the milk for free, they actually knew that that put the condition of most women in a bad spot,
yes.
right? Because what the older women would say, and if you go back to the 1800s and read their books, it's pretty interesting. Like, look, if you're out there opening your legs, right, that's going to, then men are going to continue to go to you to open your legs, and Stella over there is not going to be able to marry that guy.
Yeah.
That's a big problem and a big no-no, and so we're going to scarlet letter your ass. Okay? We're going to shame you. You're going to have big problems. You don't open your legs for marriage because it breaks the deal for us. We get everything right now, okay? We get everything. Everything we could ever want. Men have to pay the taxes, and we don't, okay? Men, they were obligated to take care of their children, or they went to jail,
yeah.
right? Coverture laws they benefited women in a big way. Women always act like they were oppressed under coverture laws. Yeah, right. No debt, could hold land, could keep land they inherited, and men could. They had everything in the world.
The coverture law, I wrote about this in Religion. Coverture laws were basically when women say, well, women couldn't own land and they couldn't have their own money. I'm like, no, they could.
They could.
Outside of marriage. If they were married, then all of that transfers over to their husband. And why? Because that guy is on the hook legally
for all of
anything that happens to those businesses, to that land.
She could go down, your wife could go down to a department store and spin you into bankruptcy, okay? And nothing would ever happen to her. You got spent into bankruptcy.
You're the one who's supposed to be in control of it.
Right? You're the one who's
keep your pocket.
Yep. Who's gonna pay for it?
You know what's ironic? Have you read the book Freakonomics?
Yes.
You read that? Okay.
I've read it too.
Yeah, in Freakonomics, the concept of the cost of prostitution, or the earning power of a prostitute going through each decade, and how in the 20s she was making somewhere in excess of $500,000 a year in today's money. But by the time she gets to the 1970s, because there's so much free love, the price of prostitution starts dropping vociferously because of it. And the idea that it was actually those prostitutes were like the bastion upon, because those women existed, then these other women were able to maintain their virtue. But now, because like what you said before, it is women sleeping around, which actually hurts women more, and not grasping the concept, and then using it. So Ryan Teraband, he also does a great job of this, of like looking at the economic reality, and Aaron Clarey, the economic reality of what free sex was doing to the population. Because the thing about it is that when you have a hedonistic culture, and you have hypergamy, you're always going to have polygyny at some point. And you've mentioned this before. If you let society go in the realm that it's going now, and trust me, I'm someone who knows about this firsthand, you will have several women chasing after these few guys at the top, and a large group of men at the bottom, and in certain societies strapping bombs to themselves because they have no upward financial momentum, or living a life of sedation with pornography and video games, and you've left these men behind completely because of the polygyny you've created.
Yeah, the idea of a polygynous society is insane. And we can just look at societies where there is polygyny to notate that they're insane societies. Societies in which, from my view, my worldview, right, I consider this part of God's plan. Why? Well, there's a woman born for every man.
Yeah.
Okay? They're almost equal in numbers.
Yes.
Why would that be the case if it was the case that one guy was supposed to have 17 of them, or 15 of them, or 10 of them? Well, it's not, right? It's not the case. And that creates a huge amount of genetic diversity, which is excellent as well. People forget about the inbreeding part that polygynous nations have. When you go to Pakistan, for instance, and it's like 70% inbred because of the polygyny issue. But the other thing that it does is it creates this idea of a class system. And if you have an underclass, right, that sees the overclass is not only getting all the money, think about what they do right now when they think that they're getting all the money. Right? They're rebelling in the streets, Occupy Wall Street, hang the rich, destroy them. I don't have enough money for gas, and this guy's flying around in a jet. Man, you throw wives and access to sex in that, they're all dead. They're all dead because men, we have a heavy desire for procreation. I think it's God-given. You may not. You may have the idea that this is evolutionarily based. But we're still saying the same thing.
Yes.
We're still saying the same thing. The drive is there. And men have killed each other throughout history for women.
More so for women than
for
any
women.
other reason.
Women were a prize, right? The way that if you were a nation, you didn't pay soldiers. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Soldiers got plunder. And what did they get to plunder? The women.
Yes.
Yeah. I was looking at this. I was reading this article just recently, and it was talking about the regulated sexual marketplace versus the unregulated sexual marketplace. Now, regulated is kind of like what we had prior to the sexual revolution, prior to hormonal birth control, which is where you would have like a 6 gets with a 6, a 7 gets with a 7, an 8 gets with an 8. It's kind of like assortative mating, which I don't think is necessarily an innate mating strategy. I think it is a socially enforced mating strategy.
Or maybe it's just an economic reality. There's just not enough 10s for all the 6s today.
In an unregulated sexual marketplace, it looks a lot like what we're talking about when it comes to hypergamy, because what we've done is we placed the reproductive process, the control of it anyways, in the hands of one sex. And so what is that? Who's going to benefit from having a 2 get with a 10, a 3 get with a 10, a 4 get with a 10?
And it also creates lopsided power dynamics.
It does, but that we're and then you add to that, we're also living in a globalized sexual marketplace courtesy of the internet and social media right now. So it just exacerbates the unregulated side of it.
I think that's the single biggest thing. It's not just that I can see
hypergamy has been around forever, but we had fail safes against it prior to the sexual revolution.
I want you to consider this. Consider the King of England in the 17th century, or actually, let's go back to the 1650s. Like, let's think about Henry VIII. Henry VIII died of gout, which is something we could easily cure now. So, like, we're wealthier in some ways than he is. But I want you to consider the level of stimulus that he was able to receive being the King of England, and then the level of stimulus that someone who is like a feudal farmer.
Average.
Okay, now I want you to consider that Kim Kardashian, Cristiano Ronaldo, The Rock, and me will see the exact same images on our social media. Like, we are subject to the exact same level of stimulus as people fabulously more wealthy or more powerful than we are. And so now what's happens is, whereas Kim Kardashian might actually be able to date, get some guy like that to settle down, and she's probably a bad example, but whoever, Megan Fox, whoever. And now we are seeing the average woman still. Now, it's not just the images. Now I can communicate with him, and now he communicates back, and he'll definitely sleep with her, but he won't commit to her, and now it screws her up for life because it's this constant monkey branching of one high-status male after another that you're trying to get to, and next thing you know, you're 30, and then you're like, you know what? I don't know why I did all this. I'm not going to take accountability for it. Let me get right with God, and then we'll have this whole thing work out. But I think social media is Richard Reeves thinks it's education. I don't agree. I think education is 15% of it because women are getting useless degrees, and so many men are becoming wealthy without college degrees. I don't think it's education. I think the majority of the culprit is social media, like what he said before. Average women now feeling that they can compete for the top tier guys, which is causing them to take terrific men and not give them a chance.
Well, I would say that I think that you're right, but that the core problem's reverse. So I agree. If you have access and you're in rural Texas in a town of 400 and you're the pretty girl in the town, you can now pursue men who are far and away outside of your league, and they're going to fuck you. And once they do, you're going to think that other men will definitely end up marrying you, and that's really a bad bad plan.
The reason I was bringing up the regulated marketplace versus the unregulated is because one of those fail-safes, of course, is the church. And it's not just the church, but like it's
not just
mainly,
the church.
It's like the social
I
stigma.
think the grounding foundation is sexual ethics. And let me make my case. if we had access to all of this tech right now, all the social media, all the everything, but there was no abortion, no hormonal birth control, and no condoms, it wouldn't even be a problem.
Because eventually you'd have women making different choices.
They would have to.
Yeah, because
they
the,
would have
the
to.
risk is always there.
So the idea is sexual ethics, I think, is the major failure. So people always ask, be like, Andrew, why do you harp on sexual ethics so much? It's not even a big deal. All you care about is making fun of and gays. And then it's like, no, look. Well, you guys, you came into something which was key, right? Which is, what is the cause of intersexual dynamics and the huge problems that's going on with polygyny, and the most important thing, the fail-safes? Rollo says, well, the church is a fail-safe. I agree. Small fail-safe, right? It's done fairly well at sexual ethics, but it had something else to reinforce it, which was much more important. There was no hormonal birth control. So it was a really easy message to be like, don't be a harlot because you're going to get pregnant with somebody's kid and you're done, right? You're done. So that was an easier message to swallow. Well, and right now, people can have affairs illicitly on their wives, girlfriends, whatever, right? And they can cover it up basically forever, right? Women can use abortion as birth control. They have access to hormonal birth control. Men have access to condoms. Men have access to vasectomies. And if that's the case, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then sexual ethics, what you're seeing is now you can be tempted with no consequence. And before, when you were tempted, you still had the idea of a consequence, right? If I get her pregnant, my wife's going to leave me and this is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But now, well, you can just have all the sex you want and maybe even keep it under wraps, right? And there's no consequence. So I think sexual ethics is actually the root, and that social media, if it existed right now without those things, right? Yeah. That sexual ethics being kind of enforced and socially enforced, we would still have that fail-safe and we would still be fine. But we don't. The technology shut down the major fail-safe.
Yeah. And then when you go back to the social reinforcement, it's also when she cheats, then she's on a journey of discovery. Yeah. And she's not being shamed by society. She's finding her groove now.
She's on a journey.
Yeah.
She's on a journey.
Exactly.
And someday,
you notice that rationales like that cropped up after the sexual revolution.
Well,
it's
like
you never would have. Yeah, well, it's a way to excuse away, like, just psychologically, a lot of the stuff that we see as sort of like leftist, progressive, feminist kind of ideology is all based on like old school Jungian psychology or what you call it? I won't say Maslow, but it's based on sort of therapy speak, right? So if you're doing something for the latent purpose of I want to get my rocks off, I want to have, like, I mean the ultimate purpose, of course, is pregnancy. But if the proximate goal is I just want to have sex with a hot guy, there's got to be a social fail-safe, or there's got to be a social contingency for that, and it's already been baked in over the course of like the last 60 plus years since the sexual revolution. So now I was on a journey of self-discovery. Oh, I'm not like that anymore. I was so crazy in my college years, and now I'm gonna get right with God, and I'm gonna be serious about it.
And when you post that on social media, people take you seriously.
That's because half of them did the same.
So like God bless Coral Osborne. I love her to death, but like whenever we're talking about sex and stuff like that, or she's doing some sort of like talk or something, I'm like, why is sex like trigonometry for you? It's like we got to figure out like why we did it and our unresolved childhood issues and others. I'm like, can't just be.
You know what?
It's actually, you're right. It's not nearly as complex. And most of this stuff is rooted, the self-discovery, the journey, the idea of me finding myself. That's all rooted in 1800s occultism. All of it. And all of it is occultism. The idea is, and if you ask them, they'll even tell you, right? It's a spiritual journey. I'm not religious. I'm spiritual, right? I have crystals and candles and this and that. And, I commune with nature. And they'll tell you this shit, right? That's part of their journey.
Yeah.
It's all occultism. And if you look at the early sex cults in American history, guess what they were doing? They were all doing weird sex shit with crystals and candles and weird occult nonsense. And what was the main thing that they would talk about? Your spiritual progression, your spiritual journey, your spiritual ways of self-discovery, and it was all ingrained around orgies and sex and crazy. It's like, when you say that feminism's rooted in occultism like Rachel does, people get very upset. They're like, no, this was a social movement about equality. Until you start looking at what these believed, and then you're like, wait a minute. No, it wasn't. This was a motion of women being able to sexually liberate themselves from the chains of the evil patriarchy, which was enforcing sexual purity on society. And it wasn't even sexual puritanism necessarily. It was these social stopgaps, which were designed to protect society. And they wanted those chains off, baby. And if they want to go do an orgy, how dare you socially shame me? That was part of my spiritual journey. And you know what? I'm not like that now.
Yeah,
I'm not like that now.
One of the things that the early pickup art, even mystery, first early pickup artists came up with was chick crack, right?
Chick crack,
so it's always, if she's into astrology, tarot cards, crystals. I mean, we get the girls on the show all the time. Every last one is into something, man. That's so funny. And like now I just learned to play along with it. But that was one of the first dynamics that the old school pickup artists picked up on. Like if you have like some sort of like Eastern philosophy, just go with it, like lean into it, because most women will have some sort of belief in that. And I think really where that comes from, like from the female psyche, is that women's form of power, as you were saying before, is soft power. It's covert power. It's the power behind the throne, right? And so how do you exercise that? Through crystals.
Literally having a discussion with a woman about something you know objectively isn't true in order to sleep with her. And the worst part about it is devastatingly effective.
I know.
And even after you explain to the woman afterwards, because, again, she doesn't feel taken advantage of. Why? Because she cannot conceive that astrology isn't real. Well, she cannot conceive
of it. And in fact,
it.
the thing that makes that probably one of the most invasive, and again, let me just caveat that I'm 100% against this, but I'm just going to use my logical faculties, having debated with witches and warlocks all over TikTok, right? Yeah, I have to put the caveat in.
I know.
Because otherwise some clip
and even when you do, you'll still get
clipped. But it is in fact the case that not only would that be an effective strategy for getting laid, but here's how effective it is. You can, if they're into tarot, crystals, cultism, whatever it is, you can make up whatever you want. It doesn't even matter. You can say, well, I'm a third-tier tarot reader. And here's what my interpretation of the cards are. You've never even seen a tarot deck before. And you can flip each card, give an interpretation, and they'll eat that shit up like it's candy because it's all bullshit, right? It's all
my mom was a gypsy.
Yeah. My great grandfather, he was a Cherokee Indian or something. You know what I mean? We had something similar to this called the rock game, where we would inscribe graven images on rocks, and then we would give a spiritual interpretation. No such game exists. Never happened. Right? They'll eat this shit right up like candy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why 80% of the followers of Joe Dispenza are female.
Oh, yeah.
How about Teal Swan?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The followers of Teal Swan, who's a nutcase, a cult leader, crazy broad, and she makes it up as she goes, too. I remember doing a stream where I was correcting her. She was talking about early mysticism, and I was like, all of that, literally everything she just said was totally made up. It wasn't that she got things, you know how people will misspeak, they get things wrong?
Yeah.
Or they're a content expert, they get things mixed up. They'll be like, I meant 1781 instead of 1791.
Yes.
Things like that, right? This chick was just making up dates where just didn't even happen, right? Making up dates where it didn't happen, making up events that didn't happen, making up forms of mysticism that was never true, right? And the people were just mesmerized. They were just, wow. And you can just tell them whatever the hell you want, because since it's all made up, why not?
Yeah.
And the thing is that's why I go after occultists so much, and I go after the witches of TikTok, and I go after the warlocks and the pagan mystics and things like this, because honestly, I mean, from my view, I think they're evil bastards, and I think that shit is designed to make people's brains mush, right? And I don't think Christianity is incompatible with science. I never have. I think that is. And I think that it turns your logical faculties off, makes you more prey to satanic influence and to social influence. Even if I assumed God completely didn't exist, there was no Satan, all of that's made up. We just assume it for a second. You do not lose your faculties of reason because you're a Christian like you do with that stuff, and that's a fact.
I want to ask you a question. Myron had that controversial quote. It's like, before a man gets into a serious relationship, he needs to sleep with 50 women. And I never agreed with that. What I thought, because I have a lot of clients who are Christian, Muslim,
I still
Jewish.
got 9 more to go. Then.
Yeah.
I gave him. We got into a debate on that on the show. You know?
And what I said instead, because I have a lot of religious clients who do not want to do that, and their response is, and my response to them is, I don't think you need to sleep with 50 women, but I think 50 women need to want to sleep with you because you understand the mechanisms of attraction, and you can tell the difference between a woman who's troublesome and a woman who you might be a good partner. I do think men need experience somewhere in order to discern which woman they want to pick. I don't know that women need to date more to get better with men. I think men do need to date more to get better with women.
But doesn't that make the argument of equally yoked? So if the idea is 2 virgins get married, right?
Yeah.
They don't have any external experiences
Sure.
from which to compare. And that's why they stay married, and their sex lives seem to be great. They report huge satisfaction rates in their sex lives.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, of course. But the thing is like, what's the alternative? Non-ignorance. So she goes and gets and oh, well, now I guess you know what you're missing. You know, it's like, why would you want that? You know, you don't want your woman certified pre-boned either if you can avoid it. So the thing is like, I would just point this out. My argument to him was a little different. So if we have that as sexual value, when I think of morality, I think of prostitutes as having 0 moral value when it comes to sexual dynamics, right? I consider it a null. In fact, it's like negative morality to engage in prostitution. My argument to Myron was, if it's the case that you think that men should get some experience, even if that requires prostitution, or it requires women to be or something like this, which I consider a moral net 0 as well, you're giving that moral value. Now it has moral value. Why? Because if it's giving you some kind of right, if it's giving you something, you're actually entailing value to that. So now I have to say that promiscuous women are valuable, and I don't think they are, and so I'm unwilling to concede that they're valuable. They're valuable as human beings. I'm unwilling to concede that the promiscuity aspect is valuable. And his argument makes it so that promiscuity actually is valuable for the purposes of experience.
Right.
And he thought about it for a second and went, actually, you're right.
Yeah.
Right? Actually, you're right. And maybe I should refine that. And he doesn't push that anymore, by the way.
Yeah.
So I feel like, job well done on that one from me.
So I
always thought of that as more like sort of like an example, an illustrative thing, because he was always saying you have to actually go sleep with 5 women, 50 women.
He's dynamite, man. Some people are a scalpel, and some people are dynamite. Myron is trying to knock you.
Well,
out
I mean,
of the hole.
but see, the reason whenever he gets quoted on that, people are like, they fly off the handle and think that that's what he meant.
Of course,
it's
same
like,
thing with you, the vasectomy thing.
You can't use allegory, metaphor, hyperbole, or anything.
Well, but
like
I asked
that.
him direct. So I was on a show, and I said, can we talk about that? And he gave me his position first.
Yeah.
And that's when I made the argument back. And he was like, I see what you're saying. I understand. He's like, you don't want to give it.
I was going to save this question for when we got on Access Vegas later, but I'll ask you right now because you brought up equally yoked. One of the things, maybe you guys can help me like sort this out. One of the things I've been kind of like contemplating and struggling with these days is the idea of Tristan Tate, when Tristan Tate said that simping is an unequal exchange of value.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, and men are expected to die for their women, is that not the ultimate exchange of value? So let's just say, for sake of argument, I mean, because even naturally, instinctively, we're going to put ourselves in front of live ammunition to protect women that we don't even know. So what I'm getting at is that there is no such thing as an equal exchange of value between men and women if my life is always going to be forfeit for that woman. Now, that's the most extreme example, but what else do I have to do to like become the high value guy? What else do I have to do?
You make a value.
So will there so when we're talking about equally yoked, now people say equally yoked in the faith, but I think a lot of people take that scripture and they'll say, well, equally yoked and like she's a professional and I'm a professional,
no, that's not
and
what
we
it
all
means.
have to, like a 6 and a 6. Like that's not what I don't. That's not the way I interpret that.
Equally yoked is, especially in the context of where it's used in Scripture, what you're discussing there is spiritual bonds, right? Be equally yoked in spiritual bond. So the idea is like, if it's the case that my wife is secretly practicing Satanism in the basement, right?
Now you're unequally.
Now we're not practicing the same spiritual bond, right? That's not happening anymore, and because of that, that's going to create conflict, serious conflict. And when it said be equally yoked, it's not even saying that people are. It's not even giving you that. It's just saying if it's the case you don't want discord, then the person you're with, you have to be equally yoked with when it comes to spiritual concerns. My wife can't be a Roman Catholic and me an Orthodox. We're going to have problems with our kids' faith. We're going to have problems with interfaith conflict. If I married a Muslim woman, like imagine that, you know what I mean? It would be, and these unions happen, and they're almost always disastrous because they're not equally yoked, right? That's what that means. What you touched on is an ontological question, the state of being. Is it the case that men are always going to be the greater sacrifice? I guess in a way, yeah. So are they ever equally yoked with women? I would argue no, but that's why I argue for a patriarchy. The truth is that even if I grant this model, the brand new Christian model of servant leadership, even if I grant it that men are servant leaders, then they're still the leaders. And so who gets to determine how to lead? The leader. So even if they are to serve, they're the ones who get to determine how to serve, not you. Otherwise, you're the leader, right? So that's an easy ideology to refute, and it infuriates the feminist Christians because there's no getting around that argument. But you touched on the most important thing, period, which is we ain't never going to be equally yoked with women. They ain't never going to happen ever. Because just as Christ was the ultimate sacrifice for us, we're never going to be equally yoked with Jesus Christ.
I was struggling with that because I had so many incels saying stuff like, well, if you even just talk to a woman, you're simping for her.
Well,
Like,
those people are.
Yeah, they are. Exactly, they are. But I think that we need to have some sort of like redefinition of like what simping is away from the idea of like.
Isn't it supposed to be a sucker, right? Sucker, basically idolizing mediocre. The idea is, the entire idea behind simping was always supposed to be, look, she ain't that great, and you really shouldn't be trying to move heaven and earth to make her think you are. Yeah, right.
Well, I think one of the things that what really comes back to the unequal exchange of value, because it really also goes back to what makes for a high value guy. It's like, well, if I'm expected to take a bullet, or women and children first, go down with the Titanic, whatever,
then you're always higher value.
Then I'm always going to be higher value than you, and there's nothing that woman can do to balance.
Welcome to patriarchy.
To balance that equation. So what do you tell guys who are like, well, see, if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, blah blah blah. I'm like, well, I've been married for coming up on 30 years. I don't know how long you've been married, but like the
not
fact
that long, but a long time.
Obviously, I'm not anti-marriage. Obviously, I'm not. You know, I'm good with monogamy, or if you promiscuity, whatever you got, whatever the girls are. I'm still going to interview you, right? Yeah. But the thing is that there's just fundamentally there can never be an equal exchange of value or an equality between men and women if I am expected to die for women.
Yes.
And it's supposed to be my masculine duty to die for that woman.
Actually, your argument is better than you think because it actually works. Your argument works in the reverse. So if you say, if I'm expected to die from women, we can't have equal value, right? But here's the reverse of that is like, if it's the case that you're the people in society that have to kill for women, then you also cannot be equally yoked, right?
Yes,
and if you're the people in society who have to enforce the rights of women, you can't be equally yoked. And if women have to appeal to the patriarchy to get rid of the patriarchy, creating the endless line of victimhood from the new patriarchy that they then have to appeal to get rid of the old patriarchy, to the old new one, to the old one, to the new, to the old, in this endless cycle of regurgitated nonsense, how can you ever be equal? You're always making an appeal for your rights to men every single time. And men, they make their appeal to rights to who? Men.
This brings up, it's a good segue, the idea of Schrödinger's victim or Schrödinger's feminist. Do you remember you talked about this? So for those of you who don't know, Erwin Schrödinger wrote a letter to Albert Einstein in 1935. Basically, it's a thought experiment
with the cat.
The cat is both alive or dead at the same time until you open, the cat is in superposition until you open up the box and you can see whether or not the cat is alive or dead. In this case, you're talking about being the victim and you can do anything you want at the same time. Yeah. So two superpositions at the same time. Can you go over this concept of Schrödinger's feminist?
Well, the idea with the cat in the box, you have to juxtapose that, like you said, this is at the same time the cat's alive or dead, at least from the perspective of the observer, right? That's the experiment only works on the perception of the observer. It's not saying what the truth of the matter is because it doesn't need to, just the perspective. Schrödinger's feminist is I can be a girl boss kick lady, but also I'm the world's biggest victim at the same time, depending on which thing suits the situation best. So if it's the case that I'm getting validation because, I'm Allie Beth Stuckey, and I just did this debate, right? And I had a pretty good performance, which she did on Jubilee. It was a good performance. I totally agree. I thought she did a good job. Kudos where kudos are due. right? Now you're a bad girl boss babe, okay? But then don't go the next day on Twitter and be like, why are men be mean to me? Oh, they're being mean. They're so mean. Now you're the world's greatest victim. And it's
If
like,
you have a problem
what
with
happened
her, you
to
must
our
be a coomer.
Yeah, what happened to our Jubilee kicking chick who came in with the pants? Like, where the hell did she go? She's gone now. Well, it didn't benefit her to continue to be the kicker then. It benefited her to be the victim then. But it benefited her to be the ass kicker on Jubilee. Same thing, then she makes the call for porn, right? And I've never agreed with your guys' stance that porn saves more marriage. I don't think the data shows
I didn't say
that.
saved. I said prolonged.
Prolongs, yeah.
I've never had anything.
Okay, well,
on
I'm
this.
just
Yeah.
saying the data, all the data that I've parsed out says the opposite. But I'll just say this, right? Whether we agree or disagree on the point, I at least understand the concept of what's being said, which is if you're in a sexless marriage, it's far more likely that your marriage is going to stay together if it's the case that you can at least get your rocks off somewhere. That logically makes sense to me. Now, whether or not in practice that's the case, we can quibble about, but we're not going to here. I would just say this. When it comes to the Schrödinger's feminist, the girl boss, or the greatest victim of all time, you look at Allie Beth Stuckey, she's hardly the worst of them. Okay, you see how this is Kamala Harris, right? She was a girl boss. She wore the pantsuits, this and that, and then it was Myron Gaines victimized me.
Yeah,
right?
Tate from Romania.
From
a Romanian prison.
Yeah, Andrew Tate victimized me. Oh my God, I'm a poor woman. This and that. Well, men can't get away with that. If I go on the internet and I'm like, look, I'm really being treated unfairly here. Stop whining, Wilson. Shut up. Stop whining. We're busy over here. We're watching. Stop being a little bit.
Why don't we bring up a pertinent example of this and just let's put this whole thing to bed for once and for all. Myron Gaines, not Myron Gaines. Destiny and Lauren Southern made up about Rolo, to cover up the fact that Destiny was indeed having sex with her.
Is this that part of the show? All right.
and what the problem is, like, if I talk to Jasmine Jafar or Farha Khalidi or anybody about this, they're going to say, well, I'm not friends with Destiny anymore.
Wait a second. No. You're getting all this wrong.
What?
It's way worse.
Way
than
worse.
that. way worse than that.
I want to say, just before you say anything, this man had my back from day
What I'm saying is,
way worse.
You couldn't. We're talking about claiming to be a victim.
Yes.
You couldn't. You had. But the problem is, here's my biggest issue: is that after you're completely proven right, there's all this nonsense they made up about you having some racist Twitter account.
Yeah.
People still can't go back and say, okay, unequivocally, this was proven to be right. Clearly, this whole thing was a smokescreen to throw at Rolo because he was on to something. And it was realistically, her husband came to you. It was like, you weren't Inspector Gadget here. Yeah. But like the point, and you were defending him for this. And my point is, like, when you talk about being a victim, it's like on the one hand, you want to be this tough person, and on the other hand, you can't be a victim. Rolo wasn't asking people to feel sorry for him. He was just straight up saying, hey, this is what the truth is, and nobody was there to hear it. But what were you saying about it? It was even worse than that.
Well, that was part of that op.
Yeah.
Was the framing. You have
Op,
to understand.
I'm glad you called it an op.
That was part of the op, was the framing. I will take you, if you guys want to hear what I think happened from the beginning,
please.
Let me try to outline it as best I can. I wasn't prepared for this, but I'll try my best.
Yeah.
So I had been hearing, I want to say this was a couple of years ago. I had been hearing through Twitch politics, which was a thing I was involved in that you guys were not. Okay. Twitch politics worked like this at the time. Destiny and Hassan Piker set the narrative, but mostly Destiny set the narrative for the day. All the orbiters from Twitch politics would repeat his narrative. And what they were trying to do is siphon off portions of his audience on Twitch to come and listen to their takes about whatever genius thing he was saying. So if Destiny said, if condoms slip off, it's not rape, right? Then everybody on Twitch politics is having debates about whether or not if condoms slip off, it's this, to try to incentivize DGG. And that's shorthand for Destiny's community. That's called DGG. Vosh's community is called VGG. The reason they call it DGG, VGG, is because DGG is the short form for his website, okay? It's .gg, and it's totally free for a person to make a .gg. He's destiny.gg. Vosh is vosh.gg. And there's multiple of these. So when we say DGG going forward here in the conversation, you'll know that I'm referencing that community, okay? Now, DGG had been, kind of on the low side, discussing that there was an affair between Destiny and a high-level conservative influencer, okay? Now, the Crucible had gotten wind of it because we've infiltrated every leftist Discord and leftist Telegram that we possibly could. And even at that time, I was ingratiating myself into it so that I could stay as informed as possible to wreck these degenerate assholes. So we'd been hearing about this, right? And there was some who knew then that this was going on, okay? Many of his inner circle knew that he was boning Lauren Southern. And it wasn't just Chud Logic. There was other people who was in his inner circle who knew it as well. And they basically were outright saying it. You know, they were basically, without saying it, they were saying it. And they thought it was a big funny joke, right? Like, oh, haha, you stupid simp conservatives are going on here while Lauren's, and saying Lauren is so beautiful and you're so based, and she's f***ing the Coomer gremlin. They couldn't believe it. So anyway, I had asked Destiny in a famous debate now. I just point blank asked him, I said, are you f***ing Lauren Southern?
Was this on PWF?
Yeah. I said,
I was there. I think I was one of the panelists. Yeah.
I said, you fucking Lauren Southern? And the man, you saw not so erudite who knew. They all knew that this was going on, right? All start freaking out. How dare you, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, look, right? With any other chick at any other time, if I asked Destiny this question, he'd be like, yeah, sure. Right? He wouldn't care. This one time you're going to get morally out. Get the out of here, right? So we knew at the time he was boning Lauren Southern. Now, Southern, at this time, now she hates my guts, right? She really hates my guts. She's going back and forth with Rachel in DMs and like this, and she comes out with this big video expose about how she moved to Canada to fight off all the bears in this small community because that's all that was left to her, and how she had to boil her own water, and she was a boss babe broad, right? And Rachel's like, you're full of shit, lady. While this was going on, there was a conspiracy which was being collaborated between DGG, Destiny, Brittany Venti, Lauren Southern, and other mean girls, actually, who were involved in this that you may not know. I've always thought that Hillary Crowder was a part of this, and other women were a part of this as well because they're all part of this mean girls clique. They have telegrams, Instagrams, things like this, where they're in a large message thread. Pearl Davis has infiltrated them. I have many of the messages, okay? So while this is going on, they were trying to do this op. What happened in reality is this woman's ex-husband did actually get a hold of Rolo. That was real, okay? Was discussing these things with him, okay? She got wind that was going on is what happened. And in order to cover up this affair, right, she basically framed him. She framed Rolo, and Destiny knew it, and they had it all planned to enhance it as much as possible. So the idea was Venti began to send fake emails, right, as Rolo's just trying to answer the questions, get at the information, you know what I mean? And they had an op, and the op was to destroy Rollo Tomassi, primarily not because Lauren Southern didn't like him or Destiny didn't like him. Venti didn't like him, and Venti was good friends with Lauren Southern, and Lauren Southern was Destiny, so she had that resource, right? And she had the leftist resource. So it was on op by Venti. Another woman who was involved in it was Chrissy Mayer, right, who was best friends with Venti at the time. Now you'll note that Chrissy Mayer has a huge back catalog of people that Venti has gone after. Almost any woman who goes on who she likes, Venti tries to destroy, right? Mm-hmm. So all of these women were in this Mean Girls clique, right? Cat Canada, all of them. They're all in this Mean Girls clique. Another one, Tree of Logic, another one that hates Rolo. I guarantee you that at some capacity she was involved in this as well. But it was definitely an op. Meaning, and here's what I mean by op. I'll be very clear and concise with my language just in case any DGGers or Destiny or whoever tries to pick this out later. It's a coalition of conspirators who are using back channels to communicate to each other for the purposes of hurting somebody's credibility. Yeah. Okay? Hurting somebody's credibility or in some way embarrassing them or something like this. And they're doing it in a conspiratorial way. Yeah. Now, all a conspiracy is a collaboration, loose collaboration or tight collaboration of people who are all moving towards the same goal. In this case, the goal is always illicit or it's not conspiratorial, right? The illicit goal was to discredit and destroy Rollo Tomassi. And it was very clear that was going on. Now, I was at the forefront saying, you're stupid. This is ridiculous. You guys are out of control. Who falls for this op? And we basically got a lot of it uncovered, right? Yeah. But the thing is why weren't the tradcons there wrecking these liberal scumbags who are talking? Well, here's why. Because Lauren Southern was one of them. And at this time, it's still, to this day, most trad conservatives have no idea that Southern was Destiny
Yeah.
for a long time,
You know,
and
she
cheating
was-
on her husband.
and
I
she
think.
was
I
And
believe.
like I was going to say, also she was just psychotically borderline personality disorder.
She was wearing her
devoted to
wedding
him.
ring
Yeah.
while and saying she was married live on stream while she was behind the scenes screwing Destiny.
So here's the thing that I find most ironic about this, because I've had several conversations with Stephen Destiny, and if he had come out and said, "Yeah, I'm screwing this conservative," but no one, we would all been like, "High five, bro, good job." Like,
Do you know why he didn't? I'll tell you.
Why?
Well, at the
This
time,
was Molina, right?
yeah, at the time he was thinking about leaving Molina for her. Like, this has now come out since, right? And this is my rudimentary understanding, is that he was having marital issues. Go figure, open relationship, right? He's having marital issues, and he was thinking about a serious and significant relationship with her. Molina has come out and said that Destiny was basically involved in an emotional affair with another woman.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about sex. And the reference there is to Lauren Southern. So the reason that he was keeping that under wraps is because he was going through, what later became a divorce, and at the time was trying to be a quiet separation. So all of this, though, was an op in order to shut Rollo up, because Rollo was talking about the fact
I was getting
that
too close to the truth.
Hey, Southern's fucking him. The whole her wearing a wedding ring thing is not true. There's a big LARP going on here, and that was hurting her credibility. They wanted to shut him up, so they pulled the op.
One more time. Lauren Southern's husband came to you. You didn't wake up one morning and say, "How do I destroy Lauren Southern?"
Correct.
And by the way, let me say this for the second time. Finding out that Destiny was banging Lauren Southern doesn't hurt Destiny at all. So that's why I was so confused why he was willing to go to the lengths he was to try to destroy you.
I think it's because I was getting too close. I didn't even know I was. I was
Yeah.
getting too close to a truth or a secret that they wanted to keep under wraps at that time. Because if I come out there and if I go and I did later on made public the exchanges I had with her ex-husband. Her ex-husband came to me in the December of 2022 and just was asking me about legal issues, because he was in Australia and their kids were in Canada, and he was trying to find a lawyer or somebody who would, he came to me because he thought that I was sort of an MRA or something like that. And we ended up having some really good conversations as a result of that. And through that, I find out about her history with Tate. I find out about her history with Destiny, that there was still haven't had any confession of this, but there was a pregnancy between Destiny and her. Whether that was a real actual abortion took place, I don't know that they did, but according to her ex-husband, there was a child involved. If it came out that Destiny impregnated Lauren Southern and she aborted it, that is a real hit
That's
to
gonna
her
be a problem
brand.
for
That's
Lauren
a real
Southern,
hit to
yeah.
her conservative brand.
No, I mean the brand's destroyed.
Yo, it is
So
now, but back
her
then
and
it wasn't.
Well, her and the Mean Girls Club dissolved shortly after it was finally confirmed that this was going on while she was wearing her wedding band.
Yeah.
And I think, and now maybe I'm getting the line here wrong, but I don't think I am. I think that she was actually still married while she was sleeping with Destiny.
Well, she
or
left
at
that.
least
She
presenting.
had what I did was she was because she was frequently on Tim Pool, and somebody had sent me a picture of her with her wedding ring on Tim Pool, and was like, "Isn't she divorced?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Well, and so I tweeted out, "Why is Lauren still wearing her wedding ring? She's been divorced for 8 months, right?" And I think, and I didn't know what I was stepping in, the minefield I was stepping into by just doing that one tweet. But apparently, that was enough to sort of trigger.
Well,
Southern
these
and
are
Destiny.
well known. This is a well known tactic throughout the Twitchosphere. They're called gay ops, and the reason they call them gay ops is because it used to be that they would spread rumors that conservative, pundits were gay.
Yeah.
Right. That was the big one. Now it's jacketing, right? The idea, and the jacketing is really funny now because it's gone into like he was sleeping with a 21-year-old when he was 30. And it's like, now it just doesn't have the same effect. You know what I mean?
And now we find out Destiny's been sleeping with the 17-year-old.
But even if it's the
girl.
case, it's like, it's really hard to get rational people when you're like, yeah, she's 21 and he's 30, to be like anything other than so. It's like, so what? Nobody gives a shit, right? That's clearly not a, so that's really funny, but that's what they're known as, gay ops. And that's what this was. It was an op. It was designed specifically to destroy the credibility. And the reason why it was going on is because at this time they were trying to maneuver into a potential relationship, but Destiny was married, so was she. Okay, so because of that, now Destiny, I guess to his credit, he was in an open relationship, so he could just kind of do that. But she didn't seem to like the emotional aspect of the affair, which is what happens in
She
these.
made mention of that when they were on Lex Friedman, too.
Yeah, she didn't like it. And then on the flip side to that, you have Southern, who's trying to convey to her conservative audience that she's still married, right? She's wearing the ring and this and that. It's a dark secret which would kind of destroy the credibility of both in a way, but just less so for Destiny. When you're a Coomer, what do you care, right? But for her, it would have been disastrous. So it was always going to come out, but with Rollo, they were teaching him a lesson, right? We're going to teach you a lesson. If you know too much about the sisterhood and what's going on here, right, we're going to come for you. I had the same I had hit pieces made on me about all kinds of crazy shit, okay? That I'm responsible for the death of my stepson, that I'm responsible for just crazy, right? And that all backfired. But with Rollo, what got him was the fact that the bait and switch, the idea that he still thought he was communicating with this guy, and it turned out that on the back end, they were opping him. But how the hell would he have known? And it blew up in their face a little bit because how to destroy your credibility 101, right?
Well, also,
we will op you.
You had forms that you never showed on YouTube specifically because they were trying to trick you into a HIPAA violation, and you didn't fall for it. And let me say one other thing. Did this destroy your book sales?
No, not at all.
Did this destroy anything going on with your YouTube?
No.
So that's the other part about
Well,
this.
it destroyed the credibility the other way. Like, why would you at this point want to do business with Lauren Southern? Right.
Yeah.
Lauren Southern has proven that even if she's in an illicit affair, the lengths that she'll go to cover it up will be to destroy somebody who didn't do anything to her,
All you gotta do
except ask her a question about the presentation of her bullshit. So why would you do business with that? But not only that, why are you doing business with these women who are involved in the politics of personal destruction to begin with? Look, there's a lot you guys say I don't agree with, okay? An awful lot, and vice versa. If I ever engaged in the politics of personal destruction with any of you?
No, of course not.
Dude, you went to bat for me.
Never
during that time.
engaged. Because to me, the idea is the ideas, right? And I think mine are best. I think mine are better. And because of that, I think that I can convince the most amount of people by coming on here and having those conversations. The ideas of the politics of personal destruction happens with these women for one reason only. They can't. They can't do that. And so I would just always advise this, right? And this is a lesson I learned from that whole fiasco and several of my own, right? Just don't discuss anything with women. Just don't deal with women in any kind of professional capacity. If it's in entertainment, if it's in online, because here reputational damage has an effect that it doesn't have in the normal world.
Sure. I think another lesson here is call your own foul. Like, just be open about if you're doing something. Like, again, they can't. One of the reasons why
the cover-up's worse than the crime.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So just call your own foul. By the way, I was 45 dating a 21-year-old. I'll go ahead and call my own foul there, but there's nothing wrong with it. We were very, very happy together. So, that was the thing. That was one of it. The other thing I wanted to ask you.
I have literally never understood that. Who gives a
Who
flying
gives a shit?
fuck?
Yeah.
By the way, when I was growing up,
Older women.
nobody gave a flying ever. Yeah, they would. You know what they would do? They would just be like, "High five."
Yeah.
Right. That's it. It's like,
but they're always like, what do you guys talk about? I'm like, rescuing animals and how much we like having sex with each other. Like, I don't understand what.
Well, I was in a debate on
What
whatever.
should we be having conversations
with a male feminist who was saying this to me, like, what do they have in common? I was like, see. Here's how I know that you're an unmarried, right? Wives and husbands never have anything in common. They almost never have anything in common.
This the guy on whatever podcast who sat across from you?
Oliver, I think, was this one.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, they almost never have anything in common. My wife likes to sit in the basement and do her nails. I don't like sitting in the basement and doing my nails. I like to play Call of Duty. She doesn't like to play Call of Duty. Well, I don't like Call of Duty, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
I like video games. She doesn't like video games. She likes to do her nails. I don't like doing my nails. She likes all sorts of crime, or not crime shows, but like drama shows, like The Blacklist and shit. Not a big fan of.
Yeah.
Right? I much more prefer these other types. We have very actual little interests in common, and yet we have an entire worldview in common. And so the thing that's so funny to me is I'm always like, I don't understand. Most married couples I know, The woman doesn't like going fishing with him, doesn't give a
Yes.
shit about his hobbies. Like, what does anybody have in common? You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking
It's
about?
like they're trying to make some moral equivalency, and it's like, what do you guys have in common? I'm like, hey, why don't you let me worry about if I have something in common with her? And I've always hear this whole idea.
It's the same like opposites attract. And then they're like, what do you have in common? What do you have? Opposites attract. What do you have in common with her? And you're like, well, I thought opposites attract, and we're supposed to have something to go like make up your mind. Schrödinger. Now that's a different one, right?
Yeah.
We should label that like Schrödinger's femcon, maybe or the Schrödinger's age gap.
Schrodinger's age appropriateness.
We'll do Schrödinger's age gap.
Yeah.
Both opposites attract. And you need to have something in common with them.
So let's bring this up because this is something I think you've discovered and you and I discovered through trial and error, which was this concept when people look at us with Access Vegas, whatever podcast or Fresh and Fit, they believe, because remember Mooncat made that video saying they believe we specifically choose the dumbest girls that we can find so that we can pick on them. You were talking to CGA when you were Coach Greg Anthony, and you were like, some of those 23-year-olds are smarter than you. What happens is,
all of them.
This is what I've seen. Let's say that it's about half and half. The half that is not sex workers, that is not degenerate, they don't speak up as much. They really aren't noticed as much on the program. The half that are, or maybe even like the third that are, they do speak up. Their boobs are out. Their hair is blonde. And because of reticular activation system, people notice them more. And so remember that one episode I said, how many ladies on the show have an OnlyFans? And no one raised their hand. And I looked at, and I was talking to the audience, and I was like, you guys keep thinking that's all we have on the show, and that what we're doing is not representative of what women actually think. And so that's the reason why women keep saying dumb things on these shows is because you guys are specifically cherry picking the dumbest women that you can. And the reality is that's not the case. We're just picking women in general.
Here's what actually, first we have to start with the supposition, which is stupid, right? Just because you're a sex worker, don't mean you're stupid. And it don't mean you're not educated. And in fact, many sex workers get into sex works as teachers, right? They're teachers, or they're in unpaid intellectual capacities, right? They have degrees in psychology often. Jasmine Jafar, for instance, she's a
law degree,
she has a law degree, right? And like Farah Khalidi,
she worked in politics.
Well, she also, I think she has a degree in philosophy, or is getting close to having a degree in philosophy, something akin to this, right? Most of the people who go on whatever come from the college in Santa Barbara. And many of them are poli-sci students, most of the time third year, or they're recent graduates, right? They have degrees in philosophy. They have degrees in medicine. They have degrees in all sorts of different things, right? And some of them have degrees in philosophy. And just because you're a sex worker doesn't mean that you're an idiot. That's one. And two, almost nobody ever went on the show was. 15% of the total show was sex workers.
But if you ask people outside.
And what's funny is a lot of the women who come in dressed provocatively, the would come in dressed more conservatively than the
I'm not giving this away for free.
The
you gotta subscribe to my OF.
The prostitutes that come in dressed more conservatively oftentimes than the normal second year college students.
When I'm doing the thumbnails, when I'm placing the girls' pictures and stuff like that, I'm going through their Instagrams to pull off the pictures and drop them into the thumbnail, right? And like most of them we know already, anyways. And so I'm looking at them, and they're like, they present themselves on Instagram with like the tits out to here. They're always in lingerie. They're always in a bikini.
Sure.
They show up in here and they're like t-shirt and sweatpants.
Yeah.
Like, damn it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Well, that's the thing, is
because they're just casual.
A lot of times they dress more provocatively even than the prostitutes do. And what I think is really funny, and this is these people telling on themselves, right? Is oftentimes they'll say, you get these dumb on, and the clip is not with a prostitute.
Yeah.
And that makes me laugh my ass off, and it makes me go, yeah, I guess. You know what I mean? Your assumption here is that she's a prostitute, and she's not. I'm hilariously enough, I'm being way more charitable than you are.
My point is, you think she's a prostitute, and she wouldn't sleep with you. So what does that say about you?
Yeah,
if she's a prostitute, and wouldn't sleep with you.
Or that they're stupid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's been some women that I've had debates with on that podcast who were very intelligent, and I appreciated the back and forth, and they had very intelligent things to say. They weren't stupid at all. And I've never thought that women are stupid because they're women. That's never been the case. I think, though, that most of the criticism comes from this. Those shows make a lot of money. And in this industry, people get very jealous about shows that make a lot of money because, let's be real, 99.9% of shows anywhere in entertainment make zero. They're a net loss for most people. Almost nobody ever gets anywhere, and almost everybody's terrible at this. They're awful at it. They're terrible entertainers. They're terrible debaters. They're terrible at every aspect of this. And you know what's really funny? Why would you expect anything different? Most people are really terrible at everything they do. Right? There's a few things you find that you're really good at, that you can make a profession out of it. It's always was going to be very few of us who are able to do this and make a profession out of it. Is it highly paid? It can be for very few people.
Yeah.
It's I think it's akin to professional athlete. I think it's easier to become a professional athlete than it is somebody who makes money as an entertainer in podcasting. I think you're more likely to become a big football or basketball star than that.
Yeah.
That's how rare it is. So it's like a lot of it is seething jealousy, and let's be real about it.
Well, so one of the problems was you would have these content creators in the manosphere saying women believe this, and then you'd have people opposing and be like, no, this is a misogynist belief system, and then you would have thousands and thousands of clips from Fresh and Fit, Access Vegas, from David Cooley, from whatever, where women were legitimately saying the things that the manosphere guy said, and then just getting dunked on and destroyed. And so now the cope is, no, those are just the women you're picking. And the reality is, bro, it is so hard to staff these shows.
Yeah.
If you think that I'm just picking women because they're dumb or have weird stances and things, you're out of your mind.
I have hundreds and hundreds of DMs from women, and Brian, I think, thousands. Why don't you bring a smart woman on the show? And I go, when can you come? And by the way, we'll pay for everything. We'll pay for the flight.
Of course.
We'll pay for your meals. We'll pay for everything. When are you coming? You're one of the smart ones, right? Okay, you're not. Okay, got it. You say you're not one of the smart ones. Can you point me to one of the smart ones?
So that's what I was gonna say. I'm glad you said that, because like one of the things that I do when I get comments or emails, or like even people in the chat, they're like, "Oh, these girls are fake and plastic, and they have tits out to here." I'm like, why don't you get some normal girls on there? I'm like, okay, send me a picture of what you think a normal girl looks like.
Is that all the time?
And I'll look for one and see if I can never happen.
We had Lisa Song Sutton, former Miss Nevada, on, and she's currently a practicing attorney. And then we had Jacqueline. I can't remember first name. Tatiana, or I can't remember her first name. They're both former Miss Nevadas, and they're on there like, why do you have these ran through on here? I'm like, bro, there's no way to help you, because not only are they not ran through, these girls particularly not ran through, and they're not prostitutes, you would never be attractive to any of them. And your behavior is just going to bury you. When you said before, it made me think of when you said before, there's a lot of guys who are not going to get married. And part of it because they're so massively uncalibrated and hyper judgmental. And they're calling a woman who's a prostitute who isn't even a prostitute, not because of the way she was dressing, but because it makes you feel better to call these girls names.
But see, is that not, clarify this for me, is that not the appeal of even our show, but like certainly for Fresh and Fit, certainly for whatever podcast, where it's this kind of catharsis for these guys who are just these who could never, like, they want somebody, they want to live vicariously through you, they want to live vicariously through Myron or us or whatever. Like the number one thing that guys get frustrated with you and me is like, you guys don't hammer these girls, like, get Myron on there, he needs to go there and kick them off or something like that, or they want you to go and like pound the Bible and wag a finger at them or something like that. But the appeal of the show is the guys in there living vicariously, telling these bitches what they would tell them, but they can't because they don't have the balls to do so, or they don't have the opportunity to do so. But if you have like these shows that are based, and I don't think that this is the strength of those shows, but I'm saying that like the audience itself, if it's an engagement media, like you're doing live streams like that, it becomes about catering to that need, catering to that principle. We've avoided that because they're our friends.
Well,
but like,
I mean, part of the reason why is because we don't have a great pool of girls to pick from a lot of times on the show. But what the strength is, when a girl's lying on the show, I can call her out, like legitimately. Myron's guessing that she's lying. I know when Savannah Staggs was on here talking about I'm a sapiosexual and I want a smart guy, I'm like, your last two boyfriends were a porn star and a male stripper. Please stop saying you're a fucking sapiosexual on my show when I know you're lying. And I wasn't even trying to be rude to her, but like that's the strength of the show, is that we know them. So when they say that's bull, we can call them out.
Well, I have a different take. So, and this is the response that I get from my audience. I think that for a long time, women have been dominant when it comes to these spheres for propaganda, unopposed, completely unopposed, and basically kowtowed to. one of the things that guys like Myron have done very well, and I think guys like me have done very well in this type of thing, I'm not usually ever mean. I'm engaging in the idea, you know what I mean? And I tend to match energy. So if you become a stupid, then I'll be a dick, right? But if you're not, I won't be. One of the things, though, that men seem to really want, I don't think it's because they want to tell them off. I think it's because they just want to see anybody tell them no.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know, like, actually, no, that's wrong. And stop trying to tell everybody it's true. You know, stop trying to tell everybody that little Johnny with mommy who's a sex worker is not going to get beat up in school, because he is. Stop telling him that he's not going to be really judgmental when his best friend comes over to him at 16 and says, hey, man, I fapped to this video of your mom. Okay? It's not going to make good lives for you. All right? It's not going to be great for your kids. It's not going to be great for any of this. And so many times there's been opportunities for these people doing these interviews and talking to these women to say that to them or push them on that, or what do you think of that? And they just don't. And so it's like, okay, well, I will ask that question, because it doesn't make any sense to me, and it is stupid, and it's irreconcilable, and it makes no sense, and you need to answer for it. And I think that that's really what people were looking for. And I think that that turned into the idea because of clips, that it's all about dunking on these, it's all about beating up on these. No, most of them aren't even prostitutes. That's one. Two, many of them aren't even promiscuous. Okay, they're not even at all. But what happens is, I think that that's narrative shaping due to clips, and not the reality of the situation of the watcher. The viewer just wants to see the pushback. They want to see pushback because they're tired of people getting away with murder. Yeah. And it's like, nobody has any problem pushing back on me. Nobody gives a shit about pushing back on my worldviews. They don't care about sparing my feelings. It's like, don't you think it's okay for me to ask some basic questions, you know?
You mentioned before with the Dave Smith interview that you generally don't have animosity after debates. Have there ever been times when you did have animosity?
Well, no, usually not caused by me.
Yeah.
But like this last debate that I did, this guy's making posts about, you know, Andrew's a he's a this, he's a that, attacking me personally, attacking my fan, because he lost the debate, right?
Yeah.
So if you lose it, so sometimes people will cope bad. They become enemies, but it's one-sided.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I try not to ever take a debate personally. I think that we can't have dialogue if we do that.
Correct.
We can't have dialogue if we do that, and I don't think that the apostles wanted that either. I think that the way I was in a debate the other night with a guy and made this point to him. The apostles had access to media now, where you weren't going to get killed for just having an argument, right? They'd be way more harsh than the Christians now are. Oh, shit. It would make you cry what these guys would probably say in the realm of media, where you're not going to get beaten to death for your opinion. And I do think ultimately that we should try not to take anything personal until a person makes it personal. Then you don't have a choice. But for the most part, I always walk away from a debate thanking the opponent almost every time for engaging with my worldview, because ultimately I'm not even trying to change your mind. I'm trying to change all of theirs.
Has there ever been a debate opponent that influenced your worldview at all? You changed your opinion about something? I
think every debate opponent does that.
Yeah?
I think every debate opponent I've ever had, no matter how bad or good, has influenced my worldview at least a little bit. You know, everybody has, to some degree, even really stupid people that you're debating with may have something useful to say somewhere in the context there. You know what I mean? Sure. Something useful that you can take away from it. If you're asking for like major incidences, there's times where leftists have changed my mind on the caveats of social issues. There's times where I've been challenged on authoritarianism and creating actual concise definitions of the words I'm using and the worldviews that I have, so I can't live in the ambiguity, but have to stand by the things I actually think when I'm questioned on them. I can't be equivocal, or I can't equivocate and just utilize ambiguity to mask what I really think, right? There's been many times leftists have changed my mind on that, where no, you do need to give an accounting for this concisely. And there's been times where facts that I thought I knew, I didn't know. And I didn't try to double down on those, but I said, look, I was wrong, and it's either going to hurt my worldview or it's not, but I'm going to contend with it. So I do think that, I've had my mind changed in a lot of debates, but my worldview fundamentally remains very unshaken, and that's why I win 99% of the debates I engage in, or something like this. Who knows what it actually is, but it's because I have a grounded worldview, and I'm constantly working to make sure Are there any holes here that I'm not seeing? What am I missing?
Do you, when you prepare for a debate, do you go through your opponent's arguments through YouTube or anything like that? What do you do to prepare?
I do it totally different than most people. So I will watch my opponents and their arguments and this and that. But I also try to think about arguments in a vacuum, right? So I try to reduce it to what are we really talking about? Because almost every prompt that you are engaging in is not actually what you end up talking about, right? So if we're talking about marriage, the problems with marriage, that usually has nothing to do with problems about marriage. It has to do with problems about divorce, right?
Yeah.
So we're not really talking about marriage at all. Oh, we agree, marriage is great. The divorce part, that really sucks, right? That's not so great. So I really try to think about, logic only has so many lines, so many trees, so many arguments, so many ways something can go. So I try to think of those things in a vacuum. You were mentioning to me before the show that ChatGPT and now AI can be very useful to these things, but I've noticed that it's actually counter useful for me to use AI. I've run arguments with AI, and AI is programmed specifically, all of it, ChatGPT, Grok, to have a bias towards a user bias.
Yes.
And the thing is that's why it's supposed to, it seems so friendly, and it seems like
It's not going to help you in a debate.
Well, have you ever noticed when people use AI for facts and things like that, it's overly accommodating, right, in the way that it presents them, so as to not hurt your feelings, to make you feel pretty good about whatever you asked it. You know what I mean? Even if you ask it true false statements, it's still kind of is, it's what it's trying to figure out is, how does this person who's asking me things lean so that I can deliver this in a way that is very positive towards them? Well, of course it's going to do that because it wants you to use it, right? If it was like, hey, you're fucking stupid, you wouldn't use it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So what I found is that happens with arguments. I've had people contact me and say, I got the perfect argument. AI wrote it, right? And I'm like, okay, well, let's have AI write an argument against itself here. And it'll write an argument back against itself. Then it refutes itself, right? Gets upset with itself, and then sometimes commends itself. And it's like, unfortunately, it's not very good. It's only good at structures for logic, but it's not good at actually grounding logic, and it's not good at all in sound arguments. It doesn't understand sound arguments at all.
So you understand, I mean, you were a robotics repair guy. You have a understanding of how robotics works, and then the concept of
mechanically,
and then artificial intelligence. What do you see in the future? So we have the discussion all the time about men falling behind, and there very likely could be, because of AI, a large group of men being left behind economically. And what kind of effect do you think that's going to happen in the future? Manufacturing jobs going away?
Yeah, let's separate two things. So I was on the mechanical side of robots, not the programming side.
Yeah.
And most robots don't use any artificial intelligence at all. In fact, I've never seen one that did ever. They use usually, at least the types I worked on, used ladder logic, which was a specific type of program logic, which was designed to assist machines in how they're supposed to function based on timers. This timer happens, this happens. This timer happens, that happens. There's more to it than that, but that's the layman's understanding, right? It's like a signal. A timer happens, you move to this function, right? Timer happens, it moves back to this function. That's a traffic signal. Robotics works the same way. So do automated machines. So everything is a trigger event based on time. Photo eye gets hit. 2 seconds after that, this arm pushes, right? It's pretty simple. Robots on a grand scale work this way, and on a small scale, they work this way. Now, as to AI, the concept of AI can work two ways. But the way that we're working AI is with nodes. That's what's happening. So it's data packets, data in, data out. We can get to the point where you have so many nodes of information that, just like those timers, it can now make predictions about what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it would look, if you had enough of these nodes, indistinguishable from actual intelligence. It wouldn't be. It wouldn't actually be artificial intelligence. It's just that if there's so much information which is there, right, that every timer is accounted for every function of reality, it would become indistinguishable from intelligence, even if it's not intelligent. So that's a bad way to explain it, but that's basically it. AI is not going to have a huge impact on manufacturer, trade labor, nothing like this, because it can't do anything, okay? It physically can't move goods. and someone's got to drive the truck, and the AI ain't going to do it. AI can't even drive a damn car without crashing, and Elon Musk's drivable car. We've been hearing about this for 15 years now, right? Yeah. And all the damn things do is crash. That's not coming to a theater near you. As far as logistics goes, you're not going to see a bunch of truckers losing their jobs anytime in our lifetime. That's not going to happen. What AI will do is it's going to hurt women a lot, because clerical work and office jobs and things like that, it can take over in a big way. And where computers still needed data entry, and so replacing the typewriter with the computer, and then using the computer for logging things and calendars rather than material physical use ones, it made it more convenient, but that allowed for more labor. AI can actually move you out of the creative markets. Now, what about entertainers?
Yeah, that was my next one. What about the AI influencer?
Yeah, so the thing is that I noticed this interesting trend. A Zoomer in my Discord, he sent me this video, and it was a stupid video. It was like a hawk coming down and grabbing a baby, and then a dog grabbing it and pulling it down. You know what I mean? And I looked at it at first, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's crazy," you know. And then I looked at it again, and I was like, "Hey, is this not real?" He's like, "No, it's not real." But I had an epiphany then. Zoomers who are raised with this shit, right, raised with technology, they can identify with ease things that take me a lot longer to identify.
Yeah, okay. I see what you're saying.
They can identify with ease when something is technologically with you, or it's not real, or something like this, because that's what they grew up with. Now, they may lack social skills. They're terrible with those. Yeah. We grew up with those. So we have great social skills. They don't. But which one's more applicable for the future? Great social skills, or being able to recognize that, hey, that news broadcast is totally fake, and you could just recognize it within 5 seconds, whereas guys like us are looking at it and going, holy shit, they're invading? Right?
The aliens are real.
Yeah, so the thing is like, that is a very practical skill for the future that we're going to have to like train ourselves and adapt to, that they just have right now, instantly. And so I don't think AI has been, for me, very useful. AI music is very useful. It's not going to get rid of artists. Give me a break. When it comes to AI helping you with writing, like I was talking to a writer recently who said all the Harlequin romance novels, which is like 70% of books which are bought, they're just using AI to write them now.
Because it's all based on one common theme.
But the thing is like, it never took any talent to write them anyway. Yeah, all it does, it seems like it's a useful tool for creators to expand ideas and creation. I can't wait until animation. Yeah. You can do better things with animation.
It's getting better.
Yeah, and I can type in what I want animated and it does it.
See, when I use AI, it's like I use it for creative things. I use it for photos and videos and some music.
It's done nothing.
He looks on Paul Perplexity, like finds out like freaking chemical combinations of.
Well, it's done nothing to hurt the creators in these industry, because that's the word, right? Yeah. Creator. The reason that technology hurts video stores is because they have something material.
Got it.
We don't. We're not selling anything material, right? And because of that, it just creates endless tools for creativity. You know what I mean?
So you still see it as a supplement or a complement to human creativity.
Well, it's the biggest bubble in the world, and it's going to pop, and it only has so many places it can go. And by the way, it ain't all that great. Yeah. It's like, it's not all that great. You still have to double check it. You can't make legal documents with it. That's all. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be really cautious.
But you think it's going to get progressively better, right? That's how machine learning would work.
I think that you'll find plateaus in the fact that you have something. All that this is really doing right now is combing the internet for answers and then typing it out to you.
Yes. So it's still based on human intuition and human knowledge base, but it's just using additional reasoning.
It's still limited by the prompts a human being can create.
And not only that, while it's made creativity more interesting, the military's had access to this technology for 40 years, and it hasn't gotten that much better. Yeah. So I'm not that concerned about it yet. And what I'm hearing from investors, and you guys probably are too, that it's the biggest bubble on planet Earth,
big bubble,
up to somewhere like 40 billion, right? And that it's going to pop. So
it'll be too common.
What would before we end here, what would your ideal world look like from a political standpoint and a societal standpoint? You are now the dictator, and you get to change a couple things. I've heard you mention before about propaganda campaigns. What would the ideal world politically and the ideal world society look like for you?
So King Wilson,
yeah.
Proclamation with my scepter.
Emperor.
Let's start with Proclamation 1 for the United. So I'll give you the political prescriptions first, then the social prescriptions. Okay. political prescription, stopping mass migration, number one order of the day. Mass migration is not popular anywhere, okay? Anywhere, because it creates all sorts of problems, not to be conflated with legal immigration in reasonably small enough numbers where you can incorporate cultures.
Yes.
Okay, to small degrees. Meaning we go from 1 million a year or 3 million a year, which it was under Biden, to somewhere more sustainable, maybe 55,000, 65,000 a year. And then they have programs which are assisting them in becoming integrated into society. Okay, mass migration, that's day one policy. The second, of course, I would draw back from the military-industrial complex being all over the world. That would be a huge one. I would outlaw abortion, except in cases of the mother's life being in jeopardy. That would be the one compromise that I would make. So I'm not a complete abolitionist there, though I don't disagree with the abolitionist. And if I had to choose the abolition completely or not, I would choose the abolition completely. So if an abolitionist was running, I would support them. Though me, I would give the caveat, if it's going to kill the mom, I would do something about that. I would get rid of DEI immediately. I would get rid of EBT. I would get rid of social welfare programs. I would get rid of all of that, right? That would be very quick, instant. The other thing I would do is I would implement policies for tax incentives for people to have children. That would be a day one policies, and I would do it in remarkably large amounts, right? I'm talking, you have 3 children, the state's going to give you $190,000. Okay, and you're going to be able to buy a house. You're going to be able to take care of those things. Now, people might say, that's socialism. Wait a second. That's what you're doing there. That's no good. Well, I figure if you draw down military and you draw down Social Security and you draw down that kind of spending and we give it back to the American family who's been putting it into those programs, that's a pretty conservative policy from my perspective. All right, I'm not taxing people more, not asking more from them. Instead, I'm just going to draw down where their taxes are going and give it back to them for giving us the next generation of human beings in the system. The other thing I would do is policies from the top down for propaganda that women shouldn't be wasting their reproductive years in college, but should instead use their reproductive years for marriage and having children young, and that they can always go to college later if they want to. But their reproductive years are the most important, but they're not going to go do that unless we give them incentives to. They're not going to, okay? One thing we can do is get rid of the student loan programs, which I think is a great idea because it's created huge amounts of debt for people, and they're getting degrees in worthless shit, and it's all diploma mill anyway.
Yeah, it would lower the price of
stupid people are graduating from college at remarkably high rates, aren't they? That doesn't seem to make you smarter to be educated. Yeah. And if, by the way, if college was really about rewarding the best and the brightest, not everybody could go.
And it used to be not everybody went.
Yeah, not everybody could go if it was really about that. So those are all political. Now there's other political things I would do as well, but that's just for a start, okay? And that would be enough. That would be enough. As far as social policies go, what I would do is I would really want to kind of hyper-focus on community and generational assistance. And so I think absent the community assistance has been the biggest thing that has destroyed the human experience in the United States. Okay, it's the biggest. And through that, what I would try to do is have the state work with the traditional churches and with even non-traditional churches to an extent for outreach to assist people with this, because they're the only ones with the infrastructure that, and while it's agenda-based, it's at least agenda-based in the majority's favor. You know what I mean? So I would be working on programs towards that from the social aspect to work on strong family and strong family dynamics. So those would be all the policies of a King Wilson immediately. Now, if I was the ultra unilateral king, I would go many, many steps further than that and say, look, Protestants, gays, all that shit, you're going to shut the hell up from now on and take a back seat. Transgenderism's completely, that's done. We're not even, no more treatments for that. That's gone. You're out of the public ethos, homosexuality, no more marriage, things like that. Political, Andrew, in my mind, I understand there has to be some caveats for these things. I would still abolish gay marriage, for instance, but I wouldn't be able to take away civil unions.
Sure.
That wouldn't be practical, right? Though we could still give the idea that marriage is sacrosanct. But like unilaterally, I would take away all sorts of shit, including rights that you shouldn't have at all and never should have had in a million years. So yeah, there's a lot that I would do prescription wise, but within the confines of the American system, that looks different. What a person could do versus me if I was the unilateral king, right?
Last question: what is the most common misconception about you?
Smoky man bad. The most common misperception of me, I think, is that I'm a mean, harsh, kind of awful guy. And the truth is that almost everybody you talk to, even if they're friend or foe, has nothing but nice things to say about me when I'm not around. And that doesn't happen with very many people. So while it's true, I think that I can be very cutting and I'm brutal in debates, my reputation precedes me in how I treat people. And everybody I do business with seems to want to do business again. And everybody that I spend time with can't wait to see me when I walk in the door. And I think that that's more than most men can say about themselves. And I think that that's the biggest misperception of me, is that I may not be a nice man, but I've always known that I was a very kind one.
Andrew, where can people find you?
You can find me on the Great Crucible. That's the Crucible on YouTube. You can find the Extravaganza on Rumble. That runs Monday through Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern time. You can also go to Debate University. You can get my course. I take all of that money and buy myself lots and lots of firearms because I think they're really cool. And then you can also you can go to my website, thecrucible.video. You can become a member. That has my entire back catalog, the best way to support us. And guys, I really appreciate your time.
I love it, man. Hey, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Rollo, for coming out. Guys, buy Rollo's 6th book. Guys, make sure you check out Andrew Wilson, The Crucible, and I will see you all next week.